What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto Dragon Slayer Chunin exams? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. The sun shone on the shinobi village Konohagakure. 1. It was morning and in a few short hours, shops would begin to open to signal the start of the day. But let us go to the apartment complex on one side of town. More specifically, the apartment of one Uzumaki Naruto. Said Naruto, currently a genin of Konoha, rose from his bed, yawning. With his eyes half closed, he sleepily gazed at the floor next to his bed. Scrolls and pens littered the floor, and he remembered that he had been up late studying new ways to make ninjutsu. He left his bed and made his way to his table, where a new carton of milk, empty ramen cups, and buttered toast awaited him. Grasping the milk carton, he held it to his ear and shook it. The sound of chunks squishing against the ways made him sigh. It was always the same. You see, Naruto may be a proud shinobi of the leaf, but he's rather different than the other shinobi in the village. Radically different. 13 years ago, Konoha was attacked by the dreaded Kyuubi no Yoko, 2, a massive beast of chakra, ferocity, and raw strength. It was said that one swipe of the Kyuubi's tails could cause tsunamis to rise, and another swipe could level mountains. It was so strong, it could not be killed, but sealed inside the body of a newborn baby, mere hours old, its umbilical cord freshly cut. The sealer was the Yondaime Hokage, 3, the strongest shinobi in the village. Using the feared Shiki Fuin, 4, in conjunction with the Hake no Fuin Shiki, 5, and the Shisho Fuin, 6, Yondaime was able to seal Kyuubi into Naruto, at the cost of his own life. Yondaime's last words that Naruto be treated as a hero for being the Kyuubi's prison. Sadly, that was not to be. The villagers, along with many shinobi, stayed in denial and kept to the claim that Uzumaki Naruto was the Kyuubi incarnate. So in response, the Sandaime Hokage, 7, who had retaken the title of Hokage, made a law that made it illegal to speak of the malevolent Kitsune, 8, under pain of death. That didn't stop the glares and assassination attempts. So Naruto adopted the mask of an idiot prankster. In reality, he was quite intelligent. Of course, what would the villagers fear, an intelligent demon, or an idiotic one? That's all I'll ever be to them, he thought, chewing on his buttered toast. A baka, 9. After putting on his god-awful orange jumpsuit, the only thing he could afford at the time, and tying his hite 8, 10, to his forehead, he locked the door to his apartment, and made his way to the bridge where he'd meet his team. When he arrived he could see his two teammates already there. Okay, here we go, he thought as he put on his proverbial mask. Good morning Sakura-chan, he enthusiastically said, but greatly cried on the inside on having to keep up the mask, wanting to only greet one female this way. Haruno Sakura, his pink-haired teammate, looked at him in acknowledgement, as did his black-haired teammate, Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke, thought Naruto bitterly. The last of the Uchiha clan in Konoha, after the rest had been slaughtered by Sasuke's elder brother, Itachi. As such, Sasuke grew up cold, indifferent, and frankly, like an emo. The two boys glared at each other, then turned their heads away. Sakura, in the middle, looked back and forth between them, then sighed in defeat. They're doing it again. They've been acting like this since we got back from Nami no Kuni. 11, hanging her head lower, she muttered, I feel awkward now. 2 hours later, the silver-haired mask-wearing sensei, 12, of Team 7 appeared. Ohio, everyone, said Hitaki Kakashi, the famous copy nin. Sakura and Naruto rounded on him and yelled, you're late. Kakashi's eye turned into an upside-down U, indicating a grin. Sorry, I got lost on the road of life. Kakashi grew serious. Anyway, there's a meeting I have to attend to, so you're free for the rest of the day. And with a puff of smoke, he was gone. Instantly, Sasuke was off towards the village. Sakura tagging after him, pestering him for a date as usual. Naruto watched them go. When is she going to get that he doesn't like her? I'm seriously thinking that the Uchiha likes boys, said a voice inside Naruto's head. I hope to God not Kyuubi, otherwise, I'm gonna be watching him out of the corner of my eye. Another thing was that after being brutally attacked and left for dead, Naruto came face to face with the dreaded Kyuubi no Yoko. Kyuubi had ranted that Naruto was a worthless vessel incapable of defense. In retaliation, Naruto railed on Kyuubi for being the cause of all his misery. After a while, the two reached a grudging respect for one another, and eventually a truce. Naruto would slightly alter the seal in his mind, allowing Kyuubi to offer commentary and aid, and Kyuubi would give Naruto his chakra in times of need. This happened when Naruto was 6. Kakashi poofed to the Hokage's office, where he saw other Chunin waiting. On one accord, they filed in to find out what the Hokage wanted. "I called you all here for a reason," said the Hokage. "You should already know why from the people, though." The eldest in the village, Sandaime Hokage, was the current strongest shinobi in the village. After Yondaime sacrificed himself, he took on the title again, with great resignation. Unlike many of the shinobi, he actually cared for the well-being of Naruto. It was he that persuaded the landlord of the apartment complex that housed Naruto to give it to him, along with giving Naruto an allowance of sorts. But he couldn't be all watchful, though. One of the downsides of being old. "So it's that time of year already?" asked Kakashi. A cigarette-smoking bearded Chunin spoke next. "You have already reported to the other countries?" This was Sarutobi Asuma, the adult son of Sandaime Hokage. "Because I've seen a few shinobi in this village." "So when is it?" asked the red-eyed black-haired Yuichi Kurenai, a new Chunin, and a Tokubetsu Chunin, 13, at that. She was a genjutsu specialist. "1 week from now," replied Sandaime. Kakashi furrowed his brow. "That's sudden." Sandaime blew smoke from his pipe. "I'll make the official announcement." At this he looked at all the Chunin. 7 days from now, on the 1st of July, we will begin the Chunin selection exams." Naruto was in a bad mood. First, he had been followed by a badly disguised Konohamaru, along with his friends Moegi and Udon, begging to play ninja with him. Then Sakura showed up, glumly asking, "What kind of shinobi plays ninja?" giving Naruto the impression that Sasuke rejected her. Again. Then Konohamaru opened his big mouth and asked if Sakura was Naruto's girlfriend. With the threat of impending doom, Naruto quickly declined Konohamaru's claim. As if to add insult to injury, Konohamaru then said that his boss could do better than some flat-chested forehead girl. Fearing for his life, Naruto and crew ran from a raging Sakura, but halted when Konohamaru ran in a shinobi from Sanagakure, 14. In an effort to save his little friend, Naruto rushed the black-clad shinobi, only to discover the cat hat-wearing shinobi used chakra strings as he tripped Naruto. Then Sasuke showed up and saved the day, by throwing a rock at said shinobi's hand, and earning the eyeing of his blonde-haired female teammate. On top of that, a mysterious red-haired shinobi, wielding a gourd on his back and rings around his sea-green eyes, appearing out of nowhere and effectively scared the crap out of his two teammates. An exchange between Sasuke and the shinobi, who was the same age they were, revealed that the 3 Sunanin were genin from Sanagakure, in Konoha for the Chunin exams. The red-haired kid said that he was Sabaku no Gaara, 15, and his two teammates were Kankuro and Tamari, both 2 years older than Gaara. Naruto was effectively ignored, and the Sunanin disappeared, resulting in Naruto's bad mood. "I suppose it's what I get for playing the weak idiot though. Now that we're going to start the Chunin selection exam," when Sandaime, those in charge of new genin, stepped forward. Only 3 came forth: Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma. "Are there any genin you wish to enter into the exam among the ones you teach?" Kakashi started. "From the 7th team I lead, I recommend Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and Haruno Sakura. I wish to enter them into the Chunin selection exam under my name, Hitaki Kakashi." Kurenai went next. "From the 8th team I lead, I recommend Hyuga Hinata, Inuzuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. I wish to enter them into the Chunin selection exam under my name, Yuichi Kurenai." Asuma went last, as predicted. "From the 10th team I lead, I recommend Yamanaka Ino, Narashikamaru, and Akamichi Choji. I wish to enter them into the Chunin selection exam under my name, Sarutobi Asuma." Sandaime grinned a little. All 3 have given their recommendations. It's been a while since we last had rookies appear in the Chunin exam. And so, it was done. Of course, the present Amino Iruka, the only other person in the village to care about Naruto's well-being, that knew about the Kyuubi, of course, was indignant to the Rookie Nine's recommendation, saying that they were too young. He was put down by Kakashi, who said that the Rookie 9 were no longer Iruka's students. As the sun began to set, many other genin began to arrive in Konoha, such as a team from Otogakure, a team from Kusagakure, and a team from Omegakure. As the sun rose to a new day, at the Rookie 9 meeting in the Chunin exam test room. Once again, Naruto was annoyed, and it had been by Sasuke. First, Sasuke had gotten the name of the previous Rookie of the Year, who was Hyuga Neji. Then Sasuke had gotten into a fight with Neji's teammate Rock Lee, and had gotten his ass handed to him. Well, at least we can take the exam in peace now, thought Naruto as he, Sakura, and Sasuke walked through the doors. Inside, they caught the sight of every genin in the room. Clearly, I was mistaken, muttered Naruto, as he and Sasuke glared at the genin glaring at them. The massive glaring contest was broken by a female voice squealing, "Sasuke-kun, you're late." Naruto turned his head to see Sasuke get glomped by one Yamanaka Ino, a pale blonde with her hair in a ponytail, completely oblivious to the leer Sasuke was giving her, as well as Sakura's cries of, "Get away from Sasuke-kun, Ino pig." Behind Ino were her teammate, the ponytailed Nara Shikamaru and rotund Akamichi Choji. Shikamaru gave off a sigh and said, "You three are taking this troublesome exam, too? Time for the mask." Naruto grinned. "Hey, it's the idiot trio. Stop calling me that." "How troublesome," retorted Shikamaru. Choji just kept eating. "Yata, found you all," came a loud voice. Naruto swiveled his head, as did the other five. Inazuka Kiba, with his puppy Akamaru, stood before them. At his side, the imposing sunglass-wearing figure of Aburame Shino, the heir of the Aburame clan, the bug users of Konoha. Slightly behind Kiba was the shy Hyuga Hinata who, upon Naruto glancing at her, glanced down at her feet. "Damn it, why can't she look at me? I wish I could say how I felt, but..." Naruto's thoughts were interrupted by Kiba's voice. "It looks like all 9 rookies are taking the Chunin exam this year." Smirking, Kiba added, "I wonder how far we can get, Sasuke-kun." Sasuke grinned and countered with a, "You seem confident, Kiba." "We trained like hell," replied Kiba. "We won't lose to you." "Shut up," said Naruto. Sasuke aside, "I won't lose to you, dog boy." "Gomen, 16, Naruto-kun. Kiba-kun didn't mean it that way," murmured Hinata, poking her fingers together. "Eh?" Naruto tilted his head to see Hinata, only to see her glance away again. On the other side of the room, 3 shinobi watched the silver-haired genin Yakushi Kabuto make his way toward the Rookie 9. The shorter one wore a white hoodie with the hood down, the sleeves torn off at the elbows, with the word, "Seirei, 17, on the front in hiragana. He had gray shorts with his shuriken pouch on his left leg. Around his neck was a Hite 8 bearing the symbol for Kumogakure, 18, and on his head was a set of goggles. In addition, he wore fingerless gloves on both hands, and traditional shinobi sanryu, 19. The tallest of the 3 wore a black trenchcoat, and a charcoal vest beneath it, which bore the kanji, shi, 20, in red. He wore the black Junin pants, fingerless gloves, and shinobi sanryu. On his forehead was his Kumo Hite 8, and he wore glasses and a bored look. The last one was the most bizarre of the 3. He had a headpiece similar to the one owned by the Suna Nin Kankuru, except his had Kumo on it. He had baggy black pants, sanryu boots that went up to his shins, and no shuriken pouch at all. He had red armor that molded to his chest, and red armor on his right shoulder and his right forearm. He wore fingerless gloves that had the sleeves extend to just before his elbows. But his face got the most attention. He had intricate patterns on his face, no eyebrows, think Kankuru's makeup without the mouth makeup, and red instead of purple, and his skin was a tanned brown. The shorter one said, "Ready to go introduce ourselves?" The taller of the 3 yawned and said, "Sure, why not?" The apparent leader grinned, showing off an impressive bunch of fangs. After all, it pays to know one's enemies. With that, the Kumo trio made their way toward the Rookie 9 and Kabuto, who had just put away his nin info cards. As Yakushi Kabuto put away his nin info cards, he felt the approach of the 3 Kumo nin, and faced to meet them. The leader of the 3, the one with the headpiece, strode past Kabuto and stood in front of Team 7. After studying them, he spoke at last. "What is your name?" His eyes were on Naruto, but Sasuke strove to answer with a smirk. Uchiha Sas, I already know who you are, interrupted the Kumo nin with a sneer. I meant your blonde teammate. After recovering from the shock of a foreign nin asking for his name, Naruto hesitantly answered, Uzumaki Naruto. The Kumo nin then gave a mock bow, completely ignoring the irate Sasuke. Ryunosuke Hachi, at your service. The trenchcoat-wearing Kumo nin gave out a yawn, then said, Kurotora Kurisu. The goggle-wearing nin was all over Hinata. Well, how do you do, pretty lady? Grasping her shaking hand, he introduced himself. Ichi Kureji, at your service, milady. And you are? Hyuga Hinata. At the moment, Hinata was ready to have a coronary. After an attempted kidnapping by a Kumo nin when she was 3, which thereby resulted in her lack of confidence, she also saw Kumo nin in a new light. Which was why she was grateful when Kiba, and to her delight, Naruto, both shouted, get away from Hinata-chan. Kurisu hit Kureji on his head, saying, always with the Hyugas. I swear, if it has white eyes and boobs, then you've probably hit on it. Clutching his head, Kureji gave him a grin. Can't help it, ever since I saw my first Hyuga, I've just been attracted to those eyes. That, and they're seemingly erotic. Kureji found himself kicked in the face by Naruto before he could finish his statement. Don't talk about Hinata-chan that way. It was here that Sakura hit Naruto on the head, for trying to cause an incident between Cloud and Leaf. Sasuke snorted and turned to glare at Hachi, saying, why do you care the name of the Dobi? Hachi interrupted Sasuke again, saying, I said I knew who you were. Uchiha Sasuke, last member of the Uchiha clan in Konoha, and resident genius of said clan, with exceptional skill over Kaden ninjutsu. Sasuke was the first to recover, as all the other members of the Rookie 9 were awestruck by the information put out. Hey, so I'm known as far as. Frankly, I don't give a damn who or what you are, growled Hachi. Because the title of genius is a shit title. Here we go, groaned Kurisu, slapping himself in the head. Sasuke was getting annoyed, but Hachi was heedless of this. As far as I'm concerned, the majority of people considered a genius has gone rogue. Sakura found herself elbowed slightly by a grinning Kureji. These are always priceless, cuz he ends pissin' people off to no end. What's he doing? Asked Sakura, and Naruto and Ino voicing her question in their eyes. Crossing his arms, bowing his head, and closing his eyes, Kureji replied, he's inducing spite into the heart of every shinobi in this room. Hachi continued. The perfect examples of Leaf are the Hubei-senin, 1, no Konohagakure, and Uchiha Itachi. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, and slowing began to emit killing intent. How dare this bastard bring his brother who shall remain nameless into this? Smirking, Hachi kept going. Other such examples of genius gone rouge are Akasuna no Sasori, 2, of Sanagakure. This one caught the ears of Tamari, Kankuro, and Gaara. Son of a bitch, muttered Kankuro angrily. As if it isn't a low blow enough, muttered Tamari. Gaara simply glared at the loud Kumo nin with bloodlust. Deidara of Iwagakure, 3. A couple of Iwa nin twitched, at the name of the infamous Kabaku Nendo, 1a, master. Zetsu of Kusagakure, 4. The feminine-looking Kusa nin narrowed his eyes at the name of the nuke nin of Kusa. When the boastful Kumo nin began to mention the 7 swordsmen of the mist, the rowdy Kiri nin in the room were ready to lead the other genin to the massacre. But then, 3 shadows made themselves known. The 3 genin from Otogakure, 5, in a display of their strength, or more accurately the leader of the 3, one who wore an oversized coat with a fur-like object on the back, and had his head covered in bandages except for his left eye and ear, made a swing at Kabuto, in mist. Was his due to the bulky metallic object on his right arm? Everyone thought so. Kabuto was able to dodge the attack, and he smirked. But 2 seconds later, his glasses cracked, and he scrunched his face in confusion. But then he realized. So that's what kind of attack it was, said he. Confused, Sasuke spoke up. What's going on? You definitely dodged it, so why'd your glasses? It must have hit his nose, said Shikamaru. Giving off a che, he then added, that's what he gets for trying to look cool. It was at this point that Kabuto fell to his knees, and emptied the contents of his stomach. Just as I thought, said Kurisu, as Sakura and Naruto made their ways over to Kabuto's side, and as the other genin in the room stared awestruck. Sound waves. What do you mean? Growled Kiba, his ears slightly ringing. Mummy man there, explained Kurisu, pointing at the leader of the three Auto Nin, Kinuta Dosu, processes sound waves through that thing on his arm. Pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose, he continued. From the looks of things, Kabuto had his inner ear disabled temporarily. At this, all the genin in the room knew to be wary of the Auto Nin. And by this time, Kabuto had been helped to his feet by Sakura and Naruto. Dosu tilted his head and said, "You're not as good as I thought for a 4-year veteran." "Write this on your cards," said Abumi Zaku, Dosu's spiky-haired teammate. "The 3 genin from Otogakure will definitely become Chunin." And so the 3 Auto Nin, Dosu, Zaku, and their female teammate, Tsuchi-kin made their proclamation. There was a loud "Bamf," and all the genin turned towards the front of the room. "Quiet down, you worthless bastards," came a voice from the smoke. When the smoke cleared, before all the genin stood an imposing figure of a man, with a black trenchcoat, a heavily scarred face, and a Konoha bandana. And behind him stood the Chunin exam proctors, wearing the same gray uniform. "Sorry to keep you waiting," said the scarred man. "I am the examiner of the first part of the Chunin selection exam, Morino Ibiki." The Konoha nin that had heard of this guy gazed at him in horror and fear. Morino Ibiki was a Tokubetsu Junin that was in charge of the Anbu torture interrogation force, and a force to be reckoned with. And he was also a sadist. But to have him as the first examiner. Ibiki pointed a gloved finger at the Auto Nin. "Hey, you 3 from Sound, don't think you can do anything you want before the exam," he yelled. "Otherwise, I'll fail your sorry asses." Dosu shrugged and said, "Sorry, guess I got a little excited, this being my first exam and all." Nodding his acknowledgement, Ibiki addressed everyone else in the room. "Listen up, you're not allowed to fight each other before the exam starts without express permission from one of the proctors. Even then, you're not allowed to kill your opponent." Here he gave off a little killing intent. "Anyone who disobeys my rules will have their sorry ass failed by me, personally. Understood?" The room was silent, except for Zaku making the comment, "This test is gonna be easy." Ignoring him, Ibiki said, "We will now begin the first part of the Chunin selection exam." Holding up a number, he said, "Turn in your applications, take a number, and sit where it tells you. Then we'll pass out the papers for the written exam." The only words Naruto heard out of that exchange were, "written," and "exam." Now he knew he probably wouldn't pass the written exam, and he needed to keep his mask, so he shouted out, "Nani?" Off in the corner Kureji started laughing like a madman. Before long, everyone was seated where they were supposed to. Sakura smirked as she stared at the sweating Naruto 2 rows in front of her. Poor Naruto. He's depressed because this is the worst type of exam he can take. In reality, Naruto was laughing on the inside. "You'd better be grateful to me and the sea dolphin." "Oh, don't worry, Yoko. I am. Naruto was jerked out of his thoughts by a soft, Naruto-kun. He looked beside him to see Hinata, who was slightly blushing. "Let's do our best," she said. "Ma, thanks Hinata-chan," said Naruto, thinking, "I'm gonna have to do something about her confidence." Ibiki caught everyone's attention and began his tirade. "Listen closely. The first exam has a few important rules. I ain't accepting questions, so if you miss something, you're on your own." While people were confused, he continued. "First rule. You're all given a starting 10 points. The written exam is worth 10 points, each question being worth 1 point. This is a deductive reasoning test. You get one problem wrong, you lose a point." When everyone agreed in confirmation, Ibiki continued. "Second rule. The pass-fail ratio will be determined by your team's total amount of points." That caught everyone by surprise, including the stoic Sand and Cloud Nins. Sakura yelled out, "Wait, what do you mean by your team's total points?" "Urusei," boomed Ibiki. "I have my reasons, so shut up and listen." Here he continued. Third rule. If a proctor determines that you cheated or did something similar during the test, here he grinned seeing several genin cast their heads to the seated proctors, you'll lose 2 points instead of 1. At the looks he was given, he laid it down for them all. There will be some of you who will leave this room without your tests being graded. Those who cheat without thinking will only hurt themselves. One proctor, Higane Katetsu, added, "We'll be monitoring you the entire time." Ibiki then added, everyone here is trying out for Chunin. Since you all are shinobi, you'd better act like a decent one. As if he could read Sakura's mind, who at this point was thinking that the team would still be in the clear if Naruto failed, he added, in addition, if anyone on a team gets a 0, that entire team will fail. Sasuke and Sakura froze, wide-eyed with shock. If Naruto made them fail. Naruto felt a shiver run down his spine. Someone's looking at me. Turning his head slightly, he saw Sakura and Sasuke giving him the evil eye. Deciding to play ignorant, he grinned in his foxy way, and gave them a peace sign. Chuckling on the inside, he felt them return his peace sign with concentrated killing intent. The last problem will be given 45 minutes after the exam begins. You have 1 hour to complete the exam. With that, he concluded with a loud, begin. Suffice to say, the written exam was the proverbial hell. The first 9 questions were ones no normal genin would be able to answer, and the 10th question was blank. It was 30 minutes into the test that everyone began to discover the true meaning of the test. The test was designed so that the genin were forced to cheat. So the war of the cheaters began. Gaara used his Daisen no Mi, 2A. Sasuke used his Sharingan. Neji used his Byakugan. Sakura used her intellect. Ino used her Shintenshin no Jutsu on Sakura. Shino used his bugs, and the list went on. As Ibiki stared out into the genin, he snorted. The only good cheaters I see out here are that Sabaku no Gaara kid, the Aburame heir, and that Tenten girl. And that kid from Sound. He had already known that there was an extra proctor along with the others, and the veins of the Byakugan were obvious, as was the red eyes of the Sharingan. Naruto was actually thankful for the fact that he had a 10,000-year-old demon in his head and stomach, but he had to make it look like he was having a hard time. At one point, Hinata actually tried to allow him to glance off her paper, but Naruto declined, saying that he'd rather pass his own way. Left and right, the proctors were failing genin teams like wildfire. By the end of the 45 minutes, there were no less than half the original number of teams in the room, including the Rookie 9, the Suna Nin, the Kumo Nin, the Otto Nin, and the Gaisel, Hyuga Neji, Rock Lee, and Tenten. Looks like it's that time, thought Ibiki. 45 minutes have passed since the exam started, it's now time for the final question. He then yelled out, I will now give you all the final question. Hachi grinned and growled, it's time. Before I give you the final problem, began Ibiki, there is one special rule for this one. At this point, Kankuro returned from his rendezvous to the restroom, and Ibiki told him to sit down. But not before Kankuro passed off a mini-scroll to Tamari. I will explain now. This is a hopeless rule. At everyone's confusion, he faced them and began to explain. First, you all are gonna choose whether or not you wish to take the final problem. This got everyone's attention. Tamari yelled out, choose? So what happens if we choose not to take the 10th question? Answering her question, Ibiki replied, if you choose to not take the question, you'll lose all your points. In other words, you fail. Grinning, he added, and when you fail, your teammates will fail with you. There were cries of indignation, and someone yelled out, bullshit. Of course we'll take the final question. Ibiki closed his eyes and continued on. And that goes with the other rule. If you choose to take it, and get the question wrong. Here he opened his eyes, you'll be banned from the Chunin exam for the rest of your life. The temporary silence was so ominous that one could hear a pin drop. And Kureji, deciding to be a smartass, dropped one. The pin hitting the floor sounded like a cannon shot. At this point, Kiba rose up and pointed a finger at Ibiki, saying, what kind of bullshit is that? There are people here who took the Chunin exam before. Akamaru added a bark for emphasis. Ibiki chuckled, you were unlucky this year. I am the proctor. And as such, your shinobi careers are in my cruel, cold hands. That's why I gave you the option of quitting. At this, Kiba sat down in a daze. You can choose to not take the final question, and fail. But you can take the exam again. Everyone had the same thought. Don't take the question and fail, or take the question and stay a genin forever if the question was wrong. Either way, it's a no-win scenario. And so, it begins, intoned Ibiki, his voice like the voice of God. When Ibiki asked the people who were going to not take the question to raise their hands, almost immediately, half the people in the room raised their hands. When their numbers were confirmed, they left. Sakura expectantly watched and waited for Naruto to raise his hand, because surely Team 7 would be better off taking the exam next year, wouldn't they? When Naruto did raise his hand, he immediately slammed it down and said, "Screw you. I ain't running away." With everyone in the room staring at him, he continued railing against Ibiki. "So what if I have to stay a genin forever? I'm still gonna be the Hokage no matter what." Here he pointed at Ibiki. "So give me the stupid question already. I'm gonna take it, 'cause I ain't afraid." With that, he seated himself with complete confidence in his abilities. "He wasn't even thinking about us. He's got quite the spirit," thought Sasuke with a grin. "And Naruto-kun? Yes, he's an idiot, but a noble one at that," thought Sakura through a grin and a sigh of relief. "He wiped out everyone's uncertainty. He's different, that Uzumaki Naruto," thought Hachi with his eyes closed. "Are you sure?" asked Ibiki. "Because after this, there's no turning back." Naruto looked right back him, with confidence in his eyes. "I'm not going back on my word. That's my nindo." Ibiki glanced at the proctors, and they gave a silent nod of assent. "I guess there's no point in belaying the inevitable," he thought with a small grin. "You're an interesting one, Uzumaki Naruto. Nice determination." Ibiki looked out among the ones left. 28 genin teams left, eh? Quite a talented bunch we got this year. Alright then, everyone here, in the first part of the Chunin selection exam. Passes. At the blank and shocked looks Ibiki was getting, he launched into a speech of how the test was designed. The first 9 questions were based on information gathering skills, and the 10th question was a test of will and might. He then talked about how information, at times, is worth more than the lives of people, and to emphasize his point, he took off his bandana, to reveal scores of slashes, burns, and screwholes in his scalp. This made nearly everyone unconsciously grasp the tops of their heads. The man had been tortured. He replaced his bandana, and then concluded with information being wrong would bring ruin to a mission, and to the one doing it. With that, he finished, a genuine smile on his lips. "I congratulate you all, on making it to the second exam." No sooner had he said that, than a large something flew in through the window and landed in front of him. Kunai hit the ceiling, and the object flew open to reveal a banner and a woman. The woman wore a net outfit, an oversized jacket, a miniskirt, and a pair of shin guards. "That woman's gonna be the death of me," thought Ibiki. "Everyone, no time to celebrate. 'Cause the second examiner is here." She had one hand in the air and yelled, "I am Mitarashi Anko, second examiner of the Chunin selection exams." Dead silence, which was broken by Naruto yelling, "What the hell?" "Anko," said Ibiki from the side of the banner, "check the atmosphere." Anko blanched, then recovered. "You let 26 teams pass, Ibiki? Losing your touch?" "Not at all, we just had some talented ones this time around." "Oh, well." She gazed out at the teams left, grinned, and said, "You can be sure that I'll cut their numbers in more than half." That scared the crap out of a lot of people. She raised her voice. "Alrighty, prepare for the next exam tomorrow. We're gonna be somewhere else, so ask your Junin sensei about it." Dismissed. The next day, the genin teams met at a place that had chains on the gate. "What is this place?" was the thought on everyone's minds. "Welcome to training area number 44, everyone." Then on an afternote, Anko added, lovingly called the Forest of Death. From that point on, nothing much happened, except Naruto mocking Anko, and getting a kunai thrown at him. Naruto found out never to make fun of the loud snake lady again. Anko then handed out waivers that said that Konoha wouldn't be responsible in any of the genin died. Then she told them that in exchange for their signed waivers, they would be given a different colored scroll for each team. Some of you will get a Kai, Earth, scroll, others will get a 10, Heaven, scroll. Your objective is to obtain both scrolls, and then make it to the tower in the center of the forest within 5 days. The rules were set, and the game was on. The genin teams separated and went to their gates, but not before Hinata gave off a, "Good luck, Naruto-kun." Then as Team 7 was walking past Team Kumo, Hachi yelled out, "I'll be looking forward to fighting you. Uzumaki Naruto." "And another thing," Anko said. "Don't die." The last thought Naruto had as the bell went off was, "After this is over, I'll tell her." We all know what happens now. But Team 7 will not run into Kabuto. Why will be explained below. Several hours later, Anko was pissed off. First they had found the bodies of the 3 Kusa-nin outside the Forest of Death, their faces ripped clean off. Then when she ran into the Forest of Death, she ran into her old sensei, the Habis Sennin Orochimaru, who basically told her that her was after the Sharingan, and then he disappeared. She had gotten to the tower when the Anbu in the forest called her to an emergency, which is where she was now. And she still can't believe what she was hearing. It's official. The team from Suna and the team from Kumo finished the exam in 90 minutes, at the exact same time, said the proctor. And look at both teams. Notice anything? Yeah, Enko said. None of them have a scratch on them. Yeah, but there's something about that Kumo nin, said the bird-masked Anbu who accompanied Enko. Something dark? Flashback. 45 minutes earlier. Team Kumo leapt through the trees, searching for potential victims. Already, the sounds of teams going at each other were clear through the trees. What scroll we got? Asked Kureji. The Kai scroll, replied Hachi. Means we need a 10 scroll, finished Kurisu. His nose twitched. And there's a team nearby. About 1.7 meters to the right. You see, in the hidden cloud village, Kurisu comes from a long line of feral shinobi. Fundamentally the same as the Inuzuka clan of the Leaf, Kurisu's family, the Tora clan, owe their abilities to living not with dogs, but amongst tigers, one of the most savage creatures of nature. However, they managed to do it was a secret known only to the Tora clan, but all that is known is that the Tora clan was currently the strongest clan in Kumo. The 3 genin dropped down in front of their targets, who turned out to be Kabuto and his teammates. Akado Yoroi, a genin wearing a mask and sunglasses, and Tsurugi Misumi, who also wore a mask, but wore glasses instead. The genin glared at each other. You've got something we want, said Hachi holding out his arm for the scroll. Kabuto smirked. Weren't you there? We have to fight for it. And with you rookies fighting as seasoned veterans, said Yoroi, holding out a kunai, what sort of chance do you have? Tsurugi grinned beneath his mask. Besides, we know what kind of abilities to expect from you. If that's true, began Kureji, a grin appearing on his face, then you'd know that resistance is futile. With that the two teams leapt at each other. Tsurugi took on Kureji, Yoroi took on Hachi, and Kabuto took on Kurisu. Kurisu opened up with Shikaku no Jutsu, 3A, and shot at Kabuto, moving like a tiger would. Claws outstretched and lengthened fangs. Kabuto was able to dodge and activate his Shoshin Jutsu, 4A, and slashed. Kureji was all over Misumi. Literally. He had done a Tsuchi Bunshin no Jutsu, 5A, and created 5 earth clones. Which then dog-piled Misumi, who slipped out using his Nan no Kaizo, 6A, to slip out and attack. Which in retrospect wasn't a good idea, because at that moment, Kureji made a gamble that paid off. He charged up his bioelectricity, and as soon as Misumi came close, dispelled the earth clones and grabbed Misumi's outstretched arm. It took several seconds for Misumi to die, even though he tried to escape. As Misumi's charred corpse fell to the ground, Kureji grinned and said, "Medium, well done, or extra crispy." Hachi was stuck with Yoroi, who at the moment had his hand around Hachi's neck, which was glowing a light blue. Yoroi smirked. Like it? Feeling a bit drained? That's my chakra Kyuin Jutsu, 7A. It siphons your chakra into me. Alas, Yoroi had the same flaw most people do. Giving out their abilities and relying on them. What he didn't realize was that with giving out the best aspect of his technique also gave out a great drawback to it. And Hachi was intent on using that to his advantage. Grinning madly, he roared, "You want it that bad? Then take it." And reaching deep within himself to that forbidden point, he unleashed a malevolent yellow chakra that surged into Yoroi. Yoroi barely had time to register that he had to take his hand off Hachi to avoid chakra overload before it happened. All he saw was Hachi's going from brown to. Yoroi literally exploded from all the chakra that he had siphoned from Hachi. Yoroi's corpse landed on its back, smoke rising from its mouth and eye sockets. The body was covered with chakra burns and nearly burnt to a crisp. Kurisu was pissed to no end. His opponent was ridiculously resilient. Every time Kurisu slashed Kabuto with his claws, Kabuto's wounds would heal after a few seconds. And the longer the two of them fought, Kurisu began to notice that Kabuto's eyes were turning red. Kabuto suddenly began attacking in a frenzy, slashing at random with his Shoshin at the Tora-enhanced Kurisu. As much as Kurisu was hitting Kabuto, the silver-haired genin would recover and attack more viciously. It was at this point that Kurisu felt the uprise of that chakra. He dispelled the jutsu he cast on him, then jumped up, gave Kabuto a two-finger salute, and said, "Sayonara." Kabuto was confused as to why his opponent had left, but shrugged it off as cowardice. He was, after all, feeling the Chidoki 6 within him, and he had never felt more alive. When the chakra spike hit him, he spun around and saw A.N. The following is only for those with strong stomachs. I'm not going to stop you from reading, but if you get sick, that's bad on you. Kabuto saw a pair of golden slitted eyes the instant before he felt a searing pain in his belly. The shock of the pain caused him to grasp his wounded area in an attempt to heal it, only, he felt something warm, wet, and slippery in his hands. Kabuto looked down to see what it was, and that one glance filled him with horror. Then mass of purple and red tissue in his hands were his guts. His guts. His guts. He was holding his own stomach and small intestine in his hands. That Kumo nin had cut him open. And with every passing second, more and more of his intestine began uncoiling out of his flesh like snakes. With the realization that he had been cut open hitting him like a bat, Kabuto's eyes turned back to normal, and he sank to his knees, vomiting blood, his guts slipping to the ground with him. In that instant, he knew. The damage to his stomach was too extensive. He was going to die. Eviscerated like a common beast. With him vision fading to black, he raised his head one final time and choked out, "What are you?" Ryunosuke Hachi grinned and raised his blood-stained claws, then said, "Or wa Bakemono." And with a sideways slash, Kabuto's throat was torn out, and his life ended immediately. "Nice one," commented Kureji, as he pulled the 10 scroll from Kabuto's pouch. "Yeah, but don't you think someone's gonna notice their corpses?" asked Kurisu, nudging Yoroi's body. Hachi was silent. Granted, he relished killing Kabuto, but he had needed to use that, and already, it was speaking to him in his mind, whispering words of malice to the leaf, urging him to kill more, to slaughter more, too. "I need to feed," he growled. Immediately, Kurisu and Kureji stepped away from the bodies, and Hachi fell on Kabuto like a wild dog. Between the rending of flesh and tearing of Kabuto's organs, Hachi was temporarily sucked into the primal side of man, the side man would want to forget. The savage animal man once was. Kureji watched as Hachi devoured Kabuto, then spoke up. "Hey, Kurisu, you up for some spaghetti? Or chopped liver?" Dodging Kabuto's liver, Kurisu groaned. "You're sick, you know that?" Kureji chuckled, and stepped aside to avoid a spray of blood. "That's what all the doctors said, but what do they know?" "Clearly more than you." "Ah, them doctors and their bitchin'. They said I'm mentally unstable, but I'm just fine." Kurisu's face faltered, avoiding another organ, then stood up and intoned, "Kureji, your mind has reduced the doctors in Kumo to tears. Grown men that have faced war and yearned for an easier lifestyle, reduced to sobbing children in a matter of minutes." Quote. Kureji was about to retort when Hachi stood up, blood all over his face and chest armor, and said, "Going to the river. Get to the tree in front of the tower and await my return." "Will do," said Kurisu. With that, he and Kureji took off towards the tower, while Hachi ran to the river. Present time. End of flashback. Over the course of the next 4 days, the tower found itself being the haven of tired teams. Team Guy arrived on the 3rd day, and Team 7 arrived on late into the same day. Team 8 and Team 10 found themselves arriving on the 4th day, and Team Otto arrived on the last day. With the exception of Team Guy, Team Kumo, and Team Suna, all the other teams looked like hell. And funny thing, on the last day, Naruto kept trying to see Hinata, but he had to deal with Kiba acting like Hinata was his. The time came when the 7 teams met in the preliminary arena, with the Hokage, the Chunin senseis, and the exam proctors. 78 people started out, and in the end, only 21 passed, thought Anko as she surveyed the teams. When I was thinking of more than half of them failing, I was really thinking of a single-digit number. At this point, many of the teams began having their own thoughts. Team Kumo. The Chunin sensei of the Kumo team, a red-haired man with a device like a telescopic eye patch, glanced down at his team. So all of you pulled through. We cannot afford having anything happen to the 3 of you. Uzumaki Naruto. This will be most interesting. Hyuga Hinata, it just rolls off the tongue. Team 10. I'm hungry. There are still this many people? How troublesome. Sasuke Kun's team made it. Team Guy. At this point, Guy was telling Kakashi about how his team made it through luck, but luck wouldn't be enough to pass. When Kakashi responded with you say something, Guy? Guy resolved to beat Kakashi another way, despite Kakashi's cool, hip attitude. So that's Guy-sensei's rival? He's got Guy-sensei beat in looks, but Guy-sensei is the coolest among the teachers. He shines like the sun. Watch me, Guy-sensei. Watch me shine, too. The ones who stand out are the ones who were left, just like I thought. Uchiha Sasuke, Team Otto. Uchiha Sasuke, I promise you, revenge. I swear it, for both my arms. The Chunin sensei of the Otto Nin narrowed his eyes. His subordinates did not appear at the tower, like they were supposed to. Which meant that something had gone wrong. Team Suna. The Chunin sensei of the team from Suna, Baki, glanced down at his team and thought, so you made it through without a scratch, Gaara. The only other person with any thoughts was Tamari. Amazing. Of the 26 teams that went in, only 7 made it here. Team 8. Kurenai was confused to see Akamaru hiding in Kiba's jacket, as opposed to on Kiba's head, where he normally would be. Akamaru's acting strange, thought she. Those Suna Nin, I'm glad Naruto-kun passed too. Team 7. Looking around, Sakura said, it looks like everyone from the Rookie 9 are here. Looks like everyone important is here, replied Naruto, sneaking a glance to his right. Damn you, dog boy? Sasuke clutched his neck and growled, I don't have a good feeling about this though. Back to the main view. Sandaime surveyed the genin below him. Such promising candidates, and many of them are new. Casting a sidelong glance at Kurenai, Asuma, and Kakashi, he added on a mental note, no wonder they were recommended. Anko stepped forward and spoke. We will now have an explanation of the third exam by Hokage-sama. Sandaime stood before the 7 genin teams. Clearing his throat, he began the speech he had been going over in his head. The third exam will now begin. But before the explanation, I want to make something clear to all of you. It is of this exam's true purpose. At the questioning looks he got, he continued. Many of you ask, why do we have a joint exam with our allied nations? The textbook answers are, to maintain good relations the allied nations, and, to heighten the level of shinobi. But these are not the true answers. Rather, this exam is the true meaning of war between allies. What do you mean? Asked Tenten. Sandaime answered, if you look back at history, we and our neighbors fought each other repeatedly. To avoid wasting manpower and talent, each nation decided that instead of the actual battlefield, the battles would be fought through tests. And thus, the beginning of the Chunin selection exam. After Naruto threw out the question that was on everyone's minds, of whether or not the fighting was not for selection, Sandaime began again. This exam examines those worthy of the title Chunin. But in addition, this exam also forces the shinobi in it to fight for the honor and dignity of their village and country. Afterward, he explained how spectators of the third exam often included daimyos who would inspect those who had shinobi in battle. This was a way for the shinobi to obtain potential clients. And in addition to the daimyos, the kage of a hidden village would also observe the fights, to see the strength in each village. And the strongest village would be the one that would get the most missions. Finally, the Chunin exams were also ways for the different villages to show their military might, as a warning to their neighbors. And when Kiba asked, then why do we have to fight with our lives on the line? Sandaime simply answered, the power of the village is reflected in the power of the country. To elaborate, the power of the village is based on the power of the shinobi. And only in a life or death situation can the true power of a shinobi be unleashed. Since you fought in such a situation, you follow the dream of those before you. And those before you have dreamed of and fought in the Chunin exams because of said situation. It is the custom in this world to show one's life and fighting to maintain a balance. The balance that must exist anywhere. This is the true meaning of the Chunin selection exam. After the tense silence, Gaara was the first to speak. What of these life and death battles? He asked, bloodlust evident in his eyes. As the Hokage was about to answer, a bandana-wearing Chunin phased into view and bowed before the Hokage. Gomen Neisai, Hokage-sama, I, Gekko Hayate, will explain the third exam. After getting acknowledgement from the third, Hayate turned to reveal bags under his eyes and a slight, sickly cough. Nice to meet you, everyone. But before we begin, I need you to do something for me. After a small fit of coughing, Hayate said, I need you to fight one another, to see who will advance into the main part of the third exam. What do you mean? Asked Shikamaru, clearly confused. It's just a few preliminary matches. We still have far too many examinees to just move on to the main event. Therefore, the rules state that some of the examinees have to be eliminated from the competition. Seeing as how we're pressed for time, said Hayate, taking a clipboard into his hands, if anyone wants to quit after hearing the explanation, they may, with my consent. Because the prelims begin immediately. There were cries of, "Nani? We just got here." And one, Mendoku's, one. Naruto clenched his fist. Alright, I'm gonna give it my all. But I'm gonna have to work harder, since that bastard of a snake put his seal over mine. You'll be doing one-on-one matches from this point on, so if you want to withdraw, please do so now. I'm not withdrawing, thought Sasuke, before he grasped his neck. That damnable snake bastard was gonna be in for a world of hurt once he found him. Then he'd pay for that mark on his neck. After shrugging of a worried Sakura and declaring, Naruto, you're one of the people I want to fight, effectively shutting up his loud teammate who had started to tell him to stop being an ass, he turned his attention to the Hokage after hearing him say, yes. I choose to withdraw, said Kurotora Kurisu, his left arm slightly raised. Despite the looks the other genin were sending him, he held his ground. As far as he knew, his work in the Chunin exams was done. Hayate leafed through the roster on his clipboard and said, you're Kurotora Kurisu of Kumo, aren't you? You may leave then. Kurisu pushed up his glasses to the bridge of his nose and said, if it's alright with you, I'd rather watch the fights, the better to tell to siblings back home. Hayate gave a look to the Hokage, who nodded his assent, then turned back to Kurisu and replied, you have been given permission. Just stand aside for now until the teams regroup. Hi, said Kurisu, before moving to the back. At passing Kureji, he uttered, remember, follow the plan. I know already, whispered Kureji, whilst uttering a grin. It won't be long before Kumo has what it rightfully should have. I'll leave everything to you too, then, said Kurisu as he walked back, pausing to glare at Gaara, with a slitted eye gone red. After Kurisu had gone to the far wall, Hayate coughed and said, I assume no others are going to drop out. Sakura was about to raise her hand, but Sasuke grabbed said hand, and told her not to do it. It is my duty to answer the question, am I strong? And as far as I know, he paused, thinking back to everyone he saw. Sabaku no Gaara, Hyuga Neji, Rock Lee, Kinuta Dosu, I must answer that question, if I am in order to defeat that man. He sent a glare at Sakura, saying, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away from me, not even you, Sakura. Seeing Sasuke grimace in pain, Sandaime inhaled from his pipe, and said, Orochimaru being here worries me, but for no, let's just observe Sasuke. Anko was indignant. Ho Hokage-sama, if the curse seal begins to run rampant, then we'll quarantine him with the Anbu. But for now, let him be. Ibiki nodded his assent, and so did Anko, begrudgingly. Well then, said Hayate, let's start the preliminaries then. It'll be similar to actual combat, with one-on-one matches. And now that we have exactly 20 people, we will have 10 matches. Subsequently, the winners of each match will move on to the third exam finals. There are no rules. You will fight until your opponent is knocked out, dies, or admits defeat. If you do not wish to die, then forfeit. However, if I judge that the match is over, here, he coughed, then I will step in to prevent any unnecessary deaths. The thing that will foretell your destiny, Hayate said, as Anko spoke into her headset, is that board. Here a wall lifted to reveal a black board. The electronic bulletin board will randomly show the names of 2 fighters of each match. And so, without further ado, intoned Hayate, I give you the first match up. The board flashed, then shuffled through names, before stopping at 2. Ichi Kureji vs Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke grinned and said, right off the bat, eh? Kureji grinned and said, kick-ass. Alright then, will the 2 fighters on the board please step up? Sasuke and Kureji walked towards Hayate, then faced each other, as Hayate said, the fighters of the first match are Ichi Kureji and Uchiha Sasuke. Are there any objections? After hearing both fighters say, no. Hayate then said, alright then, will everyone else please move up to the catwalks? As the teams began to walk up, Kakashi appeared beside Sasuke, and said, don't use the Sharingan. Sasuke, peeved at the thought of Kakashi trying to limit his growth, grinned and said, so you know? If the curse seal runs rampant, it may kill you. Then your match will be cancelled, and I'll be forced to put you down. Understood? Yeah, I figured as much, growled Sasuke. As Kakashi, Naruto, and Sakura made their way up the stairs, Sasuke felt the curse seal throb on his neck. It seems like the seal reacts to my chakra. If I try to mold chakra, then the curse seal draws strength off it. In that case, I'm going to have to try to limit my techniques. The Chunin sensei of Kumo, Gigan no Bufu, too, also called Torrigan Bufu, looked down at the fighters and thought, it was just your rotten luck to fight Kureji, Uchiha Sasuke. In the meantime, Kurisu, who had joined them, and Hachi stood on either side of their sensei. Don't screw up, thought Kurisu. With all eyes on the fighters below, Hayate backed up and said, Hajime. Kureji opened up by throwing a bunch of shuriken, but Sasuke whipped out a kunai, and deflected them back at Kureji. Kureji jumped aside, then ran at Sasuke, who in turn dodged the incoming kunai, and slammed his own into the ground, where he grabbed Kureji's legs and forced him to the floor. By holding Kureji's arm, Sasuke was sure he had it won. Yata, shouted Naruto. Don't think it's over, yet, said Kurisu, walking over to them. What do you mean? Asked Naruto. Look at him, he's on the ground. Yeah, said Kurisu, staring down into the arena, but not everything is set in stone. His name, Ichi Kureji, means, crazy one, and he's called that for a reason. This got everyone's attention, and if that didn't, then what happened next did. Kureji's hair went from black to a silvery gray, and his skin slightly darkened to a pale dark brown. Registering this as a possible threat, Sasuke let him go, and jumped back a few feet. Imagine his surprise when Kureji began to walk on his hands, and came at Sasuke, feet kicking. WTF, was the thought on everybody's mind, as Sasuke was forced to dodge every kick sent at him. Told ya so, said Kurisu. Damn, he's making a fool out of me, thought Sasuke, as he dodged kick after kick. What's the matter, Sasuke-kun? Asked Kureji, grinning madly. Don't like my Shukaku Tentu Jutsu, 1A, do ya? With that, he pushed off his hands and leapt into the air, forming hand seals. When he stopped on Ram, his cheeks puffed up and he spewed mud from his mouth. When the mud hit the ground, it shifted into another Kureji. Both Kurejis grinned and said, Suchi Bunshin no Jutsu, Sasuke-kun. Shikamaru rubbed his head. Okay, this is confusing. How does a Kumo nin know a Doden Jutsu? Let's just say that Kureji's been busy his first few years, thought Kurisu as he watched the two Kurejis perform a mad dance of death. With every 3 to 4 steps, Sasuke would get hit, and when it happened a 5th time, Sasuke fell to the ground in pain. With everyone watching, Sasuke was getting more and more angry by the second. He was the last Uchiha. And he was getting his ass kicked by some no-name crazy cloud nen. The hell with this, he growled, and dodged a blow from Kureji. Imagine everyone's surprise when Sasuke fell to the ground, pushed on the ground, and brought his foot to Kureji's chin, which hit with a resounding thud. Not anticipating this, Kureji was caught unaware and sent airborne, while Rock Lee gasped and said, That's my. This is it for you, said Sasuke, as he appeared behind Kureji and set his middle and index fingers to his back. I think not, Sasuke-kun, growled Kureji, as his earth clone jumped up after them. At this point, Sasuke had overexerted himself, and the curse seal reacted. Like a fungus, it spread from its spot to try to cover Sasuke's face, racking his body with pain. Crap, was Sasuke's thought. I won't let this thing take over, he shouted in his mind as he forced the curse seal to recede. The shock on the faces of the adults was evident, and Sasuke used this to his advantage to move upward, as Kureji's earth clone smacked into Kureji's back. Nani, shouted Kureji, as his hair and skin went back to normal. Eat this, shouted Sasuke, as he pushed down on Kureji. Kureji clone fell faster, and upon impact turned back into mud. Sasuke then hit Kureji in the head, forcing the crazy cloud nin down even faster, and once Kureji impacted, Sasuke brought his leg down in a downward strike, yelling, Shishi Renden, and knocking Kureji unconscious. As Sasuke stood shakily, Hayate moved towards Kureji, and knelt beside him. No need to confirm it, he thought, then shouted, Shauza, Uchiha Sasuke. While Naruto was shouting, "Yata!" the medics came and took Kureji away, while Kakashi took charge of Sasuke. So, it looks like the Sharingan was the deciding factor, thought Lee. You copied the moves I used on you, after seeing them once. Uchiha Sasuke, you are a worthy opponent. The board went through the same process, this time ending on the names of Bumi Zaku and Aburame Shino. Who's this weakling? Sneered Zaku, while Shino said nothing. Fighters, step up, said Hayate. Once Zaku and Shino were down, Hayate moved back and said, Hajime. Sakura vaguely remembered Zaku as the sound nin who had his arms broken by Sasuke. Is he going to fight with those arms? She wondered to herself. While over at Team 8, Kiba was saying that Shino would be the last person he'd want to fight. Naruto took this opportunity to try and sneak over to Team 8. He was within a few feet when Kiba caught sight of him and sent a glare that said, "Back off, buddy. She is mine." Naruto was tempted to flip Kiba the bird, but instead glared back and sulked back to Sakura. During this transaction, Zaku had used one of his arms to send a Zankuha 2A at Shino. It connected, but Zaku recoiled at the sight of bugs leaving Shino's skin. Upon turning his head, he saw more of those same insects. These are my Kakaichu. They attack their prey in swarms, and consume their chakra, explained Shino, holding one up. If they all attack you, you lose. If you attack them, you lose, for that will leave you open for me. Therefore, it is advisable to forfeit. Holding his hands in the tiger seal, he ended with, a true strategist never reveals his trump card until the end. Zaku was having flashbacks of when he first met Orochimaru. Back then, he had been an ordinary kid. But Orochimaru had found him, and given him power. Then he thought about Sasuke, and the curse seal. The more he thought, the more enraged he became, until he finally pulled his other arm from its sling. Aiming his good arm at Shino and the other at the Kakaichu, he roared, "How's this for trump card?" But when he tried to fire, his arms exploded. His left arm was shredded, and his right arm was blown completely off at the elbow. Cursing in pain, his eyes widened in shock, as did everyone else's, to see Shino's Kakaichu in the barrels in his arms. "When I was telling you to forfeit," said Shino, materializing behind Zaku, "I also told my bugs to block up those air holes of yours. That, my friend, is a true trump card." With that, he delivered a crushing blow to Zaku's head, knocking the sound nin unconscious. "You see, this is a good example of why I don't want to fight Shino," said Kiba, as Hayate pronounced Shino the winner. The medic nins made off with Zaku as Shino walked up the stairs. "Kick-ass, Shino," said Naruto as he materialized in front of Shino and held out his hand. Shino looked at it, then, ever so slowly, shook it. "Arigato, Uzumaki." "What the hell? Get back to your team," shouted Kiba. He hadn't seen Naruto move at all, and it pissed him off to see Hinata blush every time she looked at Naruto. Just once, I wish she would look at me like that, thought Kiba. There ain't any law that says I can't be over here. Naruto shot back. The two glared at each other, then faced separate directions. Sakura came over and dragged Naruto away by his ear, muttering, "Leave them alone, Naruto baka." In the meantime, Kakashi appeared with a, "Yo. Don't, yo, me. What about Sasuke-kun? Is he alright?" When Sakura? "He's fine, he just sleeping at the hospital," said Kakashi, while thinking, with a couple of Anbu around him. No need to tell them about my little run-in with Orochimaru. Thinking back, Kakashi knew in his heart that Orochimaru would have probably killed him and taken Sasuke had he fought. In the meantime, the board had spouted out two more names. Ryunosuke Hachi versus Kankuro. Kankuro grinned and thought, "It's finally my turn." Baki narrowed his eyes at his student's recklessness, and Gaara thought, "Idiot." As the teams watched, Hachi and Kankuro went down to the arena and faced each other. Hachi grinned and, holding his hands in the ram seal, said, "You should give up. Once I get a hold of you, it's all over." Kankuro simply removed the package on his back and said, "Then I'll end this quickly." Hayate moved back, and said, "Hajime." As soon as he did, Hachi rushed forward, disengaging from said seal, and grabbed Kankuro by the neck. Kankuro barely had time to react before Hachi began to glow a faint yellow. Electricity danced around him, catching everyone's eye, and with a grin he growled out, "Kai." Kankuro was electrocuted, but the surprise didn't stop there. Oh no. The bolts of electricity left Kankuru's body and traveled along a set path, illuminated by a set of glowing wires. "Wait a minute. Wires?" said Ino as the teams watched the electricity travel down and dance around the package Kankuru dropped. Smoke began to rise, and finally, a burned arm fell out of the bandages. Kankuru then was dropped, only to reveal. "A puppet?" said Sakura, wide-eyed with shock. "How'd he do that?" growled Kiba, his eyes wide. "Bioelectricity," came Kurisu's voice. He appeared between both teams. Pushing his glasses up, he continued. "Hachi was born with a unique system, as were Kureji and myself. All three of us were born with large chakra reserves, but his unique trait allows him to draw in positive and negative molecules, so that he can create his own lightning at will, and process it through his body." "Cool," said Naruto, watching as the medics carried Kankuru away and Hachi was declared the winner. Baki and Tamari were both startled by what happened, and Gaara glared at Hachi with bloodlust. Hachi glared right back, his patterns given him a darker foreboding, as he and Kurisu made their way back to their sensei. "Moving on," said Hayate, coughing a little. Next match, Haruno Sakura vs Yamanaka Ino. The two rivals glanced at each other, then made their way down to the arena. "Mendokus," said Shikamaru. "This is a troublesome match." "How so?" asked Choji. "If Sakura wins, then Ino won't stop bitchin' about it. And if Ino wins, then she won't shut up about it," explained Shikamaru. "As far as I know, we're screwed." Meanwhile, Ino and Sakura had been throwing kicks and punches at each other. When that refused to work, the two kunoichis tied their hite atesh to their foreheads, then started doing their things. Sakura opened up with a bunshin no jutsu, and one Sakura turned into three. Ino tried to anticipate which Sakura was the real one, but made a terrible error and received a solid punch to the head. From there on in, it became a fist fight. "This is taking too damn long," intoned Kurisu. The girls had been at it for 10 minutes, with neither showing any sign of giving up. The highlight of the battle, at least to the Cloud Nen, was when Sakura and Ino punched each other at the exact same time and sent each other flying backwards. "They're scary when they fight," murmured Naruto, when Kakashi thought, "There's no end in sight if they keep up like this." Apparently, Ino was thinking the same thing when, in a fit of pride, after Sakura said that she, Ino, was weaker than she, Sakura, was, she cut off her ponytail, spreading platinum blonde hair across the floor. Putting her hands in the ram seal, Ino shouted, "I'm gonna end this now by making you give up." Immediately, Shikamaru knew what she was going to do. She wouldn't. Ino did. Putting her hands in the bird seal, she confirmed Team 10's fears. "Geez, that idiot," said Asuma. "I know you're in a hurry, but that's useless," said Sakura, grinning. "We'll see about that," said Ino. "Ninpo. Shintenshin no jutsu. I'm gonna leave my body and enter yours, and make you give up." "That idiot," thought Asuma. Shintenshin travels in a straight line, and slowly to add. If she misses, she won't be able to return to her own body for a few minutes, leaving her body vulnerable to the enemy. "I've heard of this," said Kurisu. "It's a special ability of the Yamanaka clan here in Konoha. So if she misses," said Hachi, "she's basically screwed." "Pretty much. Long story short." Ino managed to trap Sakura in a trap by pretending to do Shintenshin, but in actuality channeled chakra into her hair on the floor, ensnaring Sakura in a chakra rope. Then she did the Shintenshin. However, she didn't count on inner Sakura being in Sakura head, roused by a yelling Naruto. Inner Sakura threatened Ino with a true vision of hell, and forced Ino back into her body. What the hell was that? Was Ino's first thought back in her body. Ino shouldn't have been kicked out that quick, thought Kakashi, his eye on the match below. It's true that Ino was low on chakra, but the fighting spirit inside Sakura towards Ino, her rival, had a bigger effect than the Shintenshin. That was triggered by Naruto's voice, and once it had awakened, it kicked Ino out. During Kakashi's thoughts, Ino and Sakura had leapt at each other for the final blow, but when the blows connected, the two kunoichis knocked each other out. The force of the blows were so strong that they knocked off each other's hite-ates. "Huh, a double KO, murmured Kurisu. "About damn time, too," growled Hachi. "I was about to end it myself if they didn't quit it." "Down, boy," said Bufu, and in response, Hachi gave him the finger when Bufu wasn't looking. Meanwhile, Hayate had glanced at the downed kunoichis only once, and then gave his verdict. Both are unable to fight. Due to a double knockout, neither kunoichi passed the fourth preliminary match. After Kakashi and Asuma had retrieved their charges, and the unconscious girls found themselves surrounded by their teammates, plus 1 Rock Lee and -1 Sasuke, obviously, the board went off. The two names that appeared were Tenten and Temari. Tenten appeared in front of Temari and Temari likewise. "I'm psyched ever since that last match," thought Tenten, sizing up her opponent. "This will be an interesting match," said Neji. "Do your best, Tenten," shouted Lee. In the meantime, Sakura and Ino had made their peace, and Hayate began the fifth preliminary match. With Guy and Lee shouting words of encouragement, all Naruto was thinking was, "These two are louder than I am." Tenten's match was one-sided. Temari had dodged every attack Tenten threw at her using her giant fan, surprising Tenten beyond belief. Tenten knew she was an excellent marker, and she knew that she never missed. So when she brought out those two scrolls, her team knew she was trying to end the match quick. But as it turned out, not even Tenten's Soshoryu, 3A, was a match for Temari's Kamaitichi, 4A. "She shut down Tenten's weapon attack like it was nothing," said a shocked Guy. Naruto stared down at Temari, asking, "Who, or what is she?" Baki said, "We are not to be trifled with." Gaara said nothing. "That was boring," said Temari, as Tenten landed on Temari's fan, putting her back at an unhealthy angle. "Very boring. The shinobi from Sand," said Sandaime, "are truly fearsome." Fifth match winner, Temari. At the triumphant smirk Temari gave off, Lee disappeared from Naruto's side and reappeared in front of the thrown Tenten, and caught her. "Nice catch. Why did you do that?" shouted Lee. "Is that not something you should do to someone who fought their hardest?" Temari, content with her victory, slammed the butt of her fan on the ground and said, "Urusei na. Take that trash and leave." In response, Lee gave off a Konoha Senpu, despite Neji's cries of, "Stop Lee," which was blocked by Temari's fan. "You act like you dress," she said. "Stupid." When Guy's sensei appeared, Gaara decided to speak up. "Temari, get back up here. You won. Leave that guy and his ugly guardian." Lee and Gaara glared at each other, but Lee stopped at Guy sensei's hand on his shoulder. "Let it go, Lee." Guy then turned his attention to Gaara. "Gentleman of Suna, a word." At Gaara's glare, he continued. "He's strong. You might want to be prepared for it." Kiba scoffed. "They're trying to pick a fight with the team from Suna? I'd never want to fight them." He had seen firsthand how the team from Sanagakure had massacred the team from AIM. Or more accurately, how Gaara had massacred those three. Hinata slightly nodded and added, "They're a strong team." "Too true," came another voice. Kiba swung his fist around, missing Naruto who had appeared behind Kiba, apparently trying to slip past the dog user. "Keep playing, Uzumaki. I'm gonna have your hide for a trophy. Eat that loser. Now it's just me and Hinata-chan, the way it was meant to be." Naruto was about to open his mouth to shout, "Always remember to spay and neuter your pets, Akamaru," when someone grabbed his ear again, and started dragging him away from Team 8. "No, Hinata-chan, save me from." He looked up to see Sakura-chan? Hinata watched as Sakura berated Naruto for constantly antagonizing Team 8. "Anyo, Sakura-san." Naruto-kun was being friendly. "Also," said Sakura, a small grin, "thanks for before. If it weren't for your passionate support." She thought back to her match. "I'd have lost to Ino easily." "Damn straight," said Naruto, a foxy grin on his face, narrowly dodging Sakura's fist. The board started shuffling names again, and Naruto and Rock Lee were giving out shouts of, "All right. Me next, please." Heedless of their pleas, the machine showed two names that were clearly not either of theirs, much to their disappointment. Nara Shikamaru vs Tsuchi Kin. "Me, eh?" said Shikamaru as he made his way into the arena, with Ino shouting, "Shikamaru, don't lose. Be a man." Dosu cautioned his teammate, "He uses the shadows. Beware of them." Kin smirked and said, "I won't fall for that stupid trick." Once both were in the arena, Shikamaru groaned. "Hey ref, can I get a redraw? Sorry, all decisions are final." "Damn," said Shikamaru. "Mendokus. On top of that, I'll be dealing with a girl." Kin, pissed about his earlier comment, replied, "Then I'll be sure to finish this match quick." "I know what her teammates can use," thought Shikamaru, as Hayate began the match, but I have no idea what she can do. On top of that, she saw my technique. And I can only this. He put his hands into the rat seal. As he tried to do his cage main no jutsu, 5A, Kin dodged and threw senbon at him. When he dodged, he noticed that the two she threw had bells on them. So that's your game? You throw the senbon with the bells, and I'll react to the sound, and notice the other senbon you throw. He grinned. Clever. Kin managed to trick him with chakra strings attached to the bells, which not only surprised Shikamaru so she could hit him, it also cast a genjutsu every time he heard the ringing. Right now, instead of one Kin, he was seeing 12. But which one's the real one? All the while, Kin was playing with Shikamaru, obviously prolonging her victory. Idiot, thought Hachi. She's got a nice body and a pretty face, and her skills are pretty good too, but she's too damn arrogant, and that's gonna cost her the match. Hachi was proven right when Shikamaru used his cage main to travel along the string and connect with her body. He drew a shuriken from his pouch, and she did the same. When he threw it, she threw it as well, screaming, "Are you crazy?" When they both ducked backwards, she didn't count on her head slamming into the wall directly behind her, knocking her unconscious. Bent backwards, Shikamaru grinned and stated, "A shinobi grasps the landscape and the situation before they fight." Standing up, he pulled the senbon embedded in his out stating, "Even if we move the same, the distances between us are different." The shuriken was just to get your attention away from the wall. Shauza, Nara Shikamaru. Dosu glanced down at the medics carrying away his teammate and muttered, "I'm the only left now." Hachi, Kurisu, and Bufu watched Kin being carried away as well. "Do you think she'd be useful for the plan?" asked Kurisu. "Yeah," replied Bufu. "Just tell me where they're taking the injured," said Hachi, "and I'll do the rest." When the board started, Kiba started counting off who was left. "Let's see, that Otto Nin, me, Hinata-chan, Naruto, Choji, Lee, Neji, and that guy from Suna." Watching the board, he anxiously added, "And I prayed to Kami-sama that I don't get matched up with that Suna Nin." Neji, watching the screen, said in an undertone, "I guess I can have fun with the rookies this year." He trailed off, casting a glare at Hinata, who looked away after noticing Neji's glare. The names on the board stopped, saying Uzumaki Naruto vs Inuzuka Kiba. "Kick-ass. It's finally my turn," shouted Naruto, while Kiba shouted, "Hells yeah. We got lucky. Let's kick his ass, Akamaru." Apparently, Kiba was forgetful of his previous fear. Lee slumped dejectedly, murmuring, "If I'm not next, then Sakura-san will call me fuzzy brows and hate me." While Naruto was cheering how he was next, Kakashi glanced at his student and thought, "Naruto, show me. No, show all of us just how much you've grown." When Naruto and Kiba entered the arena and Hayate started the match, Naruto said, "I got sick of waiting, and now it's time to show off my moves." Kiba growled and pointed, yelling, "Hey, you bastard, that's my line. Just for that, I already got this match won. Right, Akamaru?" After Akamaru barked in confirmation, Kiba then pointed at Naruto again and said, "Hey, dead last, let's make a deal. Beat me, and I might let you go out with Hinata-chan. Lose, and you gotta leave us alone, forever." That struck a chord. "No deal, dog boy. Hinata-chan ain't some trophy. Just for that, I'm gonna kick your ass." Hachi started laughing. "I wish I had a camera, 'cause this is gold." All Hinata heard was, "Hinata-chan ain't a trophy," and she started going red. "Nah Naruto-kun. I want to cheer you on, but I'm on Kiba-kun's team." Neji glared first at Naruto, then at Hinata, and said nothing. Kurenai was thinking, there's no way Uzumaki will be able to beat Kiba, while Sakura was yelling, "Don't lose to this guy, Naruto." After Naruto told Kiba not to bring Akamaru into the match, Hayate intervened on Kiba's behalf, saying, "Nin can count as tools, just like the Aburame bugs and a standard shinobi's kunai." Lucky bastard. Elsewhere, Choji was saying that Kiba was lucky, Shikamaru scoffed, and the team from Cloud got ready to watch the fight. "Now, we shall see," started Hachi. "How he does," ended Kurisu. "Then we can see if what we believe is true," ended Bufu-sensei. Kiba grinned as he watched Naruto. "I don't know how strong he's gotten since he became a genin." He remembered back when he had first seen Naruto. Naruto had been a third-year academy student trying to be funny, who had no grasp of shinobi abilities. Hey, and now, he's gonna face me, the top dog? Holding out his fist, Kiba said, I'll take you out in one pity hit. Whatever, you can't beat me. This proved to be an intriguing match. Kiba had opened up with Ninpo, Shikakyu no Jutsu, and charged Naruto, elbowing him in the stomach. Naruto flew a few feet, then lay still. A grinning Kiba was shocked when Naruto poofed into smoke, and Kiba was able to dodge the blow that came. What did he do? Don't, said Naruto, grinning at Kiba, underestimate me. Oblivious to the cheers Lee, Sakura, and strangely Shikamaru were throwing him, he wiped some blood off the corner of his mouth. I still got hit a little, thanks to that Habiteme. 3, my chakra control's all screwed up. Hey, you're bleeding. You're not all cool, so stop playing the tough guy. Hey, take your own advice, dog boy. Kiba growled and beckoned Akamaru to him, then reached into the pouch on his back, and threw some smoke bombs. The smoke was so thick, Naruto couldn't see anything. When he started getting hit, he knew he was in trouble. I can't see, where is he? After another blow, Naruto decided to stop and think for once. Okay, think, what would the Baka Kitsune do in a situation like this? Deciding there to act like a fox, he channeled chakra into his ears. This was a new sensation, as he could hear the low hissing of the smoke. There, he jumped, narrowly avoiding the blow Kiba had thrown, and exiting the smoke. He forgot Akamaru. The minute he saw the dog, he knew. Akamaru had jumped at Naruto and pushed him back into the smoke. Naruto-kun. Damn, I can't see anything, said Shikamaru. The smoke cleared, revealing the downed form of Naruto, next to a tail-wagging Akamaru. Kiba was ready to congratulate the running Akamaru, who proceeded to bite Kiba's arm, to everyone's shock. Even more shocking was when Akamaru poofed back into Naruto, who immediately let go and started spitting, yelling, "You taste like dog," whilst the real Akamaru was being held by a Naruto clone. Is that really Naruto? Asked Ino. He's on even ground with Kiba. No, he might be better than him. Kurisu had to say, he was impressed. He used Kage Bunshin and Henge perfectly. He's everything we expected. Yeah, said Hachi. He timed his movements perfectly. Interesting, thought Neji. He bit Kiba on his own, then complained about it. Naruto-kun, that was amazing. Yeah, Naruto, you can do it. Kiba, however, was pretty confident in himself. He threw Akamaru a soldier pill, which made Akamaru turn red and get stronger. Akamaru broke free of the Bunshin, which poofed into smoke, and Akamaru rejoined Kiba. At this point, Kiba was anxious to end it there. He performed a Jyujin Bunshin, 6A, which turned Akamaru into a Kiba clone. Things went downhill from there. Kiba and Kiba Akamaru went on the aggressive offense, while Naruto was stuck on defense, and all he could do was dodge every blow sent at him. At this point, Kiba and his clone pulled out Kiba's trump card, the Gatsuga, 7A. The two spun like twisters, connecting with Naruto and sending him flying, to everyone's dismay. He landed on the ground and stayed there, grimacing in pain. Damn, that hurt, like hell. He faintly heard Kiba say, and that's our difference in skill, and he was pissed off to no end. Shakily standing up, he growled out, I'm gonna become Hokage, and I won't lose to you, dog boy. Kiba then said the words he would come to regret later, you? Hokage? You're weaker than me. Grinning, he finished with, I'll become Hokage for you. Oh, hell, no, thought Naruto as he righted himself to glare at Kiba. That's wrong, Kiba-kun. Naruto-kun isn't that weak. Naruto-kun is different from me, in that he believes in his own worth. Hinata's thought went back to the last year. I really think Naruto-kun is amazing. It's a very hard thing to do, to bear what no one else will bear. That day, she had been watching him train. He had accidentally stabbed himself with the kunai he threw, which had rebounded off one of the others. He pulled it out and let the wound heal, oblivious to the wide-eyed girl far behind him. She had seen the wound heal, then activated her Byakugan to be sure. It was then that she saw the two chakra sources in his body, one blue and one red. She thought it was a random mutation in his body, until the graduation of academy students to Genin. Naruto was the only one who failed, and therefore the object of scorn. One person would say he failed, another would agree and say something, but then get cut off before the completed thought. But she made the connection there. The glares, the hatred, the red chakra. It could have only meant one thing. He had no one to help him. No one tried to recognize the real Naruto-kun. But now, she returned back to the present. Everyone is watching. As she thought, everyone was watching. They watched as Naruto glared at Kiba and said, "You wanna fight me for the Hokage title?" Here he grinned. "You'll lose, and be the underdog." They watched as Kiba told Naruto that he was gonna make sure Naruto wouldn't get up again, and then he lunged. He and Akamaru performed another Gatsuga, and Naruto narrowly avoided it. When Kiba threw the smoke bombs again, Naruto was ready. When the smoke cleared, there were 3 Kibas instead of 2. Which was all right with Kiba because he was confident in his dog-like senses. So he threw a blow to the Kiba on his right, who upon hitting the ground turned into Akamaru. At this point, Kiba was confused, so he threw a punch at the other Kiba behind him, revealing the true Akamaru. With his back turned, the first Akamaru revealed itself to be Naruto, who placed a scroll on the ground and grinned, jump-kicking Kiba. "Sugoi ne, 4, Naruto-kun." "As to be expected," said Kakashi, a hint of pride in his voice of a former prankster. Gaara glared, while Hachi started to grin. "Looks like he's making a comeback." "Yeah," said Bufu-sensei. But could he be the one? At this point, Kiba was enraged, but bid himself to calm down, assuring himself that he'd attack for an opening, and when said opening was found, end the match with a Shikaku no Jutsu from behind. When Naruto talked about ending the match with a new move, Kiba was confused, but decided not to give him the chance. With that, he started his last attack run. First throwing shuriken, then solid punches, then when he saw the opening, he went for it. Performing his last Shikaku, he was behind Naruto before said genin could counterattack. Naruto was thrown up in the air, then Kiba aimed his claws for Naruto's chest, hoping to end the match. Naruto was able to block it, but at the cost of being stabbed. Bleeding from his arm now, he was mad as hell. But Kiba was just too damn fast. Kiba was behind him again, claws outstretching, yelling, "Come on." Kiba was behind Naruto, ready to deliver the final blow. Shikamaru saw Naruto grin, and immediately knew something was up. He was right, because right before Kiba hit him, Naruto used Kawarimi with the scroll he left on the ground. The scroll that had a V on it, then promptly exploded in Kiba's face. Kiba was caught by surprise, but even more surprised by the stench that come out of the scroll. Yelling in pain, he covered his now burning nose, while everyone else stared in surprise. Naruto was laughing at Kiba's sad predicament. "How do you like the stink bomb, jackass? Prankster's code. Be ready to prank anywhere, at any time." So, a bit of the prankster remains, thought Kakashi. But still, that was flawless. "I see," said Shikamaru, grinning. He didn't expect that to happen. "Now I'm gonna get you back for those Gatsugas, 'cause they hurt like hell," said the rejuvenated Naruto, performing Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Kiba was unable to defend himself as Naruto rained his Uzumaki Naruto Renden on Kiba. When Kiba hit the floor, he was out cold. And Hayate confirmed it as Naruto's clones dispelled. Shauza, Uzumaki Naruto. Though the rest of the Rookie 9 cheered him on, Naruto only really wanted the recognition of one person. Glancing upward, he saw her. Her shining face, that cute smile. She has acknowledged me. My will to grow strong. I have grown stronger. He grinned as he glanced at his bloody fist. Hachi nodded in confirmation. I would say he just proved himself, wouldn't you? Bufu-sensei nodded. He is the one we were searching for. As Naruto made his way up the stairs, Hinata was debating in herself what to do. Finally, she decided on giving him the healing salve she had concocted. And said Blonde took the healing salve, mostly out of appreciation, but also on Kurenai's suggestion. In the meantime, Neji glared at the 2 rookies, malevolently plotting how best to end what they had. You seem so carefree, Hinata-sama. When Naruto rejoined his team, he was amazed to see that he still had the Kyuubi's healing factor. At least something works. Inwardly, he was grateful for the healing salve Hinata gave him, because it dulled the pain he felt. Outwardly, he said, Hinata-chan's medicine works like a charm. As the medic nins carried Kiba and Akamaru away, Hinata caught up with them and tried to give Kiba the ointment, but he denied it, saying that she had to look out for herself. Then he said, out of all of us left, if you have to fight that sand guy or Neji, forfeit right away. He's going to be harsh on you, and you might get beaten badly. Before Hinata had a chance to respond, The board went off, revealing what she and Kiba had feared. Hyuga Hinata versus Hyuga Neji. Shit and damnation, growled Kiba, as the medics carried him out. When the two made it to the center of the arena, Naruto and Sakura were under the impression that the two were siblings. Lee informed them that Neji and Hinata were cousins, and that it was a bad thing that they were fighting, because of recent bad blood between the two branches that each came from. Hinata from the Hyuga main, and Neji from the Hyuga branch. As he was about to elaborate more, Hayate began the match. Neji started out by belittling Hinata on how she should forfeit because she wasn't suited to being a shinobi because of her nature. When Hinata began to protest, it brought a memory back to Kurenai of when she took charge of Hinata. She had met with Hinata's father, Hyuga Hiyashi, in regards to Hinata being a shinobi. Without a second thought, Hiyashi told Kurenai to take Hinata to do with as she saw fit, for he saw his eldest daughter as nothing more than a defect who couldn't even beat her own younger sister who was 5 years younger. When Neji started telling Hinata that trying to change herself was useless, that she was fated to be the failure of the Hyuga clan, Naruto knew he definitely stepped over the line, because that was an insult to him and Hinata. So when Neji started playing his mind games with poor Hinata, Naruto did what he always did when he got mad, he started yelling. "Shut the hell up." When Neji looked to acknowledge him, as did the other genin, Naruto continued on. "You can't just label people like that. All that stuff you spout out is a bunch of crap in your head." What a noisy guy, thought Neji, but his eyes narrowed upon seeing Hinata. She looks determined, confident, so you're not giving up? Don't blame me for what happens later, then. Arigato, Naruto-kun, thought Hinata, as she activated her Byakugan. I won't run away anymore, thought she as she slid into the Jukin stance. Let us fight, Neji ni-san. Even though Hinata put up a good fight, she was still no match for Neji. Neji revealed that he had been using the Jukin since he started fighting, and already Hinata was starting to feel the effects. When Neji hit her in the chest, she flew backwards and hit the floor, hard. When Neji started on about his crap about how she was fated to lose, she shakily stood to her feet, saying that she wouldn't back down, that she was going to change. When she started soughing up blood, everyone knew something was wrong. Kakashi said that Neji had more than sealed a number of tenketsu, 5, disabling Hinata's ability to use the Jukin. And yet, she still fought. She fought to the limits of her ability, trying to follow her Naruto-kun's example. All those years of watching him versus the prejudice of the village, he had proven his strength. Even though the beast lay within, she saw him as an inspiration, trying to change himself for acknowledgement. Inspiration turned into affection, and she saw him for who he was. When I'm watching Naruto-kun, she thought as she fought, it makes me feel like I can accomplish something if I try. It makes me feel like I'm worth something. When Neji gave her a Jukin uppercut, he was sure that would end the match. But he was wrong, and annoyed when she stared at him through her vein-surrounded eyes, then charged him. So he did what he knew he'd take pleasure in. He gave her a Jukin blow to the heart. She fell to the ground, much to the chagrin of the rookies and Lee. When Neji told her that she was too weak to lay a finger on him, he deactivated his Byakugan and started walking to the stairs. But she continued on. Finding her inner strength, she struggled to her feet, even as Naruto yelled out, "Look! Don't stop the match." Neji, confused, asked her why she stood up. Hinata did not answer, but she was determined not to show weakness in front of Naruto. Incensed, Neji activated his Byakugan and rushed toward, ignoring Hayate's cries of, "Neji, the match has ended," fully intent on putting her down for good. Instead, he found himself surrounded by Guy, Kakashi, Kurenai, and Hayate. "What's this then? More protection for the main family," he muttered. It was when he felt a sharp point on the back of his neck that he realized that someone had a kunai on him. Naruto had his back to Neji, and held a kunai in his left hand pointed into the back of Neji's neck over his right shoulder. "Had you continued," growled he, "you would have been dead before you hit the floor." Ignoring his questioning on how Uzumaki had gotten down there that quickly, Guy reprimanded Neji, saying how Neji had sworn that he wouldn't bring in his troubles with the main family into the Chunin exams. Hinata started coughing up more blood and fell to her knees. Kurenai rushed over and so did Naruto, and Sakura and Lee rushed over as well. On her back, Hinata saw the object of her desire, asking, no pleading that she was okay. Struggling with her breathing, she tried to utter the words she wanted to say, but was unable to. Naruto-kun, she thought, her vision going dim. Was I able to change a little? Neji, having been let go at this point, said the glaring Kurenai with a smirk, if you've got time to glare at me, then you could see how far along she is. When the medic nins got there, they ushered Hinata onto the gurney, knowing that at all the internal damage Neji inflicted, she wouldn't last 10 minutes. Naruto was pissed. First, the Kyuubi, then the hatred of the villagers, then him finding out, and now this. He faintly heard Neji say something about, once a dropout, always a dropout. Although Naruto wanted nothing more than to pin Neji's ass to the wall, he knew he'd get another chance. With his limited jutsu knowledge, and a lack of Kyuubi, he would have been done in. So he reached down, dipped his right hand in Hinata's blood and held it out towards Neji. I promise you, revenge. Neji flinched. For a moment, he saw rage within those blue eyes. Eyes that flashed purple, with a cat-like slit. He shook his head. No, those eyes were blue, but had plenty of rage. A while later, Hayate called the next match, Gaara vs Rock Lee. When Gaara and Lee entered the arena, he began the match. Lee opened up with a Konoha Senpu, which was deflected by Gaara's sand. The sand then tried to smash itself onto Lee, but dodged it. Shino remembered the sand as the same that killed the 3-aim nin, and wondered if the same thing would befall Lee. Lee, however, was more energized, and launched into a flurry of punches and kicks. While Lee was attacking and defending from the sand, Hachi narrowed his eyes and said, that seems very familiar. Bufu nodded. I heard a rumor about Suna. That they had a secret weapon. Kurisu nodded in agreement. And I guess, that Gaara kid is the weapon. Gaara had the sand in his gourd as an offensive and defensive weapon. The sand protected him from all Lee's attacks. It was here that Gaara started to feel the bloodlust it was sending him. It was also here that everyone found out that Lee was unable in use ninjutsu at all. But then Guy found him, and molded him into a taijutsu specialist. Gaara's next attack tried to smash Lee into the floor, but Lee had avoided the sand and leapt on top the fingers of the statue. And upon Guy's order of, take them off, Lee revealed the weights on his ankles. Bufu narrowed his eyes. This could be problematic. Lee dropped the weights, which rose up a massive dual dust cloud upon impact, startling the shit out of everyone watching. Lee's speed had increased dramatically. He was able to nearly hit Gaara, but the sand kept blocking. Eventually, he got a hit in. Gaara was incensed. He was Sabaku no Gaara, the demon of the desert, and everyone feared him. He was not going to be beaten by some tacky kid. So when Lee hit him again, he activated his Suna no Yoroi, 8A. Everyone was shocked to see Gaara in this state, including the team from Suna. Lee saw that he had no choice, so he unwrapped his bandages and rushed around Gaara in a circle. Then with a kick, Gaara was sent airborne. Lee wrapped his bandages around Gaara, then spun. Used centrifugal force, he smashed Gaara into the ground, shouting, Omit Renge. Lee dropped to the ground, having jumped before absolute impact. Gaara's cracked form lay in the crater that the Omit Renge had caused. Certain that he had the match, Lee, among everyone else, was shocked to see Gaara's face crumble away to reveal nothing. An empty shell. Feeling a sense of foreboding, Lee spun around to see Gaara rise up from the sand, grinning like a madman. Putting his hands into the ram seal, he used the sand to toss Lee around. At this point, Lee saw no other choice. He was out to prove that he was a genius of hard work, and he wasn't about to let Gaara take that away from him. So he started to open them. Kakashi was shocked and dismayed to learn that Rock Lee knew the Ura Renge, and that he could open 5 of the 8 inner gates. Revealing his Sharingan, he explained that the 8 inner gates were limiters on the human body, and to open them would release the body from all inhibitions. But should one have all gates open, in exchange for near godlike power, the person would die. Lee's hair rose, his pupils disappeared, and his skin turned red as he opened the 3rd gate, Simon, 6. Opening the 4th gate, Shumon, 7, his power increased dramatically, and he rushed Gaara, shattering the floor that he ran on. The force of him hitting Gaara was so great, everyone had to shield their faces from the rubble and dust. This is definitely problematic, thought Bufu. Gaara found himself airborne again, but this time, his armor started coming off. Lee was nothing but a blur, and Gaara was being tossed around like a carcass. Lee opened the fifth gate, Hodumon, 8, and rushed Gaara again. Punching Gaara. Gaara was forced back, but snagged on one of the bandages Lee held. Pulling Gaara towards him, Lee did his final move. Ura Renge. The force of the move was equal to a small explosion. Dust went everywhere, forcing everyone to cover their faces once more. No of the genin had seen what had happened, except for Kurisu and Hachi. "Damn," said Hachi, a hand covering part of his face. "If that spandex kid makes it through this, it could screw up everything." "Don't be too sure," said Kurisu, pointing at Gaara. Gaara had surprised everyone by revealing that his gourd was made of sand the instant before he hit the ground. Lee, having closed the gates in the air, hit the ground with a thud and rolled away from the crater. Everyone thought for sure that did Gaara in. Alas, it was not to be. Gaara was in the crater all right, but the sand that was his gourd had cushioned the impact. Not one to let an opportunity go to waste, Gaara raised his hand from his spot on the ground, but with great effort. His sand left him to wrap around the weakened Lee's left arm and leg. Even though Lee tried to move, he was still in pain from using the lotus. Sabaku Susu. Gaara's sand crushed Lee's left arm and leg, and Lee let out a scream of pain. But Gaara didn't stop as his prey fell to the ground. He wanted to kill Lee, Hayate be damned. But before Hayate could step in, Guy had dispelled the sand that headed for Lee's body. The morose look on Guy's face brought up unwanted memories in Gaara. His feminine uncle that tried to kill him, his scheming father who tried to assassinate him, his younger innocent self, and his fearful brother and sister. Clutching his head in pain, he hissed, "Why are you helping him?" To which Guy answered, He's my precious subordinate." The sand on the ground and Gaara's Suna no Yoroi formed on his back to make the gourd, as Gaara stalked away, and Hayate began to announce the winner. And yet, Lee got up. He had his left arm and leg crushed, had opened 5 of the 8 gates, and performed the lotus techniques. By all accounts, he shouldn't have been able to stand up, but there he was. When it hit that he was unconscious, Guy was ready to break down right there. Lee was out to prove that hard work could defeat genius, even at the cost of his body. "Shauza, Gaara," said Hayate, but his pronouncement basically went ignored by all except Gaara. Sakura tried to aid Lee, but Kakashi told her not to, saying that her presence would only hurt Lee, that it would make it harder on him. Tamari confidently said, "There's no one who can beat our Gaara," to which Hachi appeared next to her and replied, "He almost did, and not everything is set in stone. Even your mighty Sabaku no Gaara can be beaten." Hachi then reappeared next to Hayate. Tamari was visibly disturbed, while Kurisu said, "He just had to show off with the Shunshin no Jutsu, 9A. Other than that, Naruto was the only other genin who went down, passing a glare at Gaara as he ran past, towards Guy and Lee. While 2 medics placed Lee on the stretcher, the other one took Guy aside and explained Lee's injuries. Between the bone fractures and the torn muscles, that would have been okay to know that they would take some time to heal. But when the damage to his left arm and leg were brought up, Guy faced the prospect of Lee forfeiting his ability to become a shinobi ever again. When the medics started to take him out, Naruto yelled at them, "What's Fuzzy Brows supposed to do when he finds out? Can't something be done?" When he was ready to chase down the medic nins, Kakashi, and strangely Hachi, appeared behind him. "Calm down, Naruto. Demo, Kakashi-sensei. It doesn't matter whether or not he wanted to fight the Hyuga or the Uchiha as much as he had hoped," said Hachi, his piercing brown eyes watching Gaara Suna Shunshin back to his team. His, Hachi's, arm on Naruto's shoulder. In fact, that's probably what caused this incident. Kakashi made a mental note to delve deeper into the history of this Kumo Nen, but with one arm restraining Naruto, he finished. To make those wishes come true, he used a self-damaging technique to try and win, and look at the result. He tried to abide by the wordless promise he made Neji, Sasuke, and even you. He tried to head for the stage so that he could battle all 3 of you. With his hand on Naruto's head, he finished with, "Don't forget that." After making his peace with Guy, and with Hachi, Guy, and Kakashi using Shunshin back to their respective place, with Naruto running up the stairs, Hayate began the 10th match, which was obvious to all. "All right, Kinuta Dosu, Akamichi Choji, step up." Dosu was engrossed in his own thoughts, as he came into the arena. "I need to advance into the final matches and fight Sasuke-kun. Otherwise, I won't be able to meet your expectations, Orochimaru-sama. I've got a fair idea of what's going on, though. You got to Sasuke-kun before us, and gave him the Juin Fuin, 9, instead of killing him. Thinking about his teammates, he concluded, we were just pawns to test Sasuke-kun's power. Orochimaru-sama doesn't want Sasuke-kun's life, he wants the whole Sasuke-kun. To be blunt, this was one of the shortest matches in the prelims. Choji opened up with Ninpo, Baika no Jutsu, 10A, and then converted it to his meat tank. All Dosu did was move around a bit, then endeavored to make Choji hit the wall. When Choji was stuck, Dosu punched Choji in the back with his melody arm, then flicked his melody device. Choji came out of that unconscious. About 70% of the human body is made of water, and water conducts sound and electricity, said Dosu as he was announced the winner. As the medics attended Choji, Dosu thought, Orochimaru, I will prove that I am not just some test subject. Thank Kami-sama, it's finally over, thought Hayate, as he coughed a little. The main matches can finally begin, thought Sandaime. Well, that concludes the preliminary matches, said Hayate. Then when the match winners had assembled in the remains of the arena, he continued. To those of you who made it to the third part of the Chunin exam, all but one are here, so congratulations. Sakura surveyed the winners. There was Naruto, of course, and Shikamaru, Shino, and Neji. That accounted for Konoha, and there were the two from Suna, Gaara and Tamari. Then there was the lone Otto Nin, Dosu. Lastly, there was Ryunosuke Hachi from Kumo. Turning to Kakashi, she started asking him about Sasuke, but Kakashi said, I'm not sure about the details, but don't worry about him. Thinking back to the Fuja Huan, one, he silently hoped it would be enough. It's all up to him now. Sakura, he said, I need to leave, so give me details on the main matches later. With that, he used Shunshin and left her saying, okay. Down below, Sandaime tilted his hat and said, I will now begin the explanation for the main matches. Thank God, thought Naruto, who had gotten tired of waiting. Outside, two figures met. They both wore the outfit of a Junin, save that one had a pair of square glasses and pale yellow hair. This one was kneeling in front of his master, who he held true allegiance to. The preliminary matches have concluded, and now they're about to begin the main matches, said Yakushi Buki, 2, the elder brother of Kabuto by 7 years. Orochimaru nodded faintly, gazing at a trio of birds. This village, no, this country has become soft, too used to peace. The rest of the shinobi nations are busy increasing their military strength. Turning to Buki, he then asked, did you find out what happened to your Genin team? Standing, Buki nodded. The 3 of them were killed. Yoroi was burned from the inside out. I'm guessing he overused his chakra Kyuin jutsu. Masumi was burnt to a crisp. And my younger brother, he grimaced, Kabuto looked like he'd been mauled and eaten. Orochimaru furrowed his brow. Eaten? Yeah, said Buki. I didn't understand how Kabuto managed to get himself killed, but he was everywhere. The only way I was able to recognize it was him was by his hair. He had seen Kabuto's remains, and it unnerved him how his little brother was killed. Granted, he didn't give a damn about Kabuto, but the plans of Orochimaru-sama come first. Clearing his head, he changed the subject. Do you think you'll be able to kill him? Catching on, Orochimaru grinned a little. The old geezer? Yeah, but I don't think it'll be much fun to kill him now. Looks to me like you're hesitating, said Buki, pushing up his glasses. At Orochimaru's glare, he continued. I mean, the hidden shinobi villages are mobilizing for conflict, and Otogakure is one of them. The old man is the bullet. Uchiha Sasuke is the trigger, and you're the gun, are you not? Buki had no love for Sandaime, for he was one of the rare few that craved violence, and being in Konoha was too maddening for his tastes. You're so observant, you could give your brother a run for his money, said Orochimaru. But why did you need those other 3? Asked Buki, referring to Dosu, Zaku, and Kin. They were inconsequential, said Orochimaru. Those 3 have outlived their usefulness, and now only serve one purpose, fodder. Here he grinned even more. But if you're so eager to prove your usefulness over your brothers, there's one thing I must ask you to do. At Buki's look, he said. Kill Uchiha Sasuke. Buki almost faltered. But I thought, the Juin Fuin I gave Sasuke-kun has been sealed by Kakashi. Even though that doesn't matter, if the darkness in Sasuke-kun's heart disappears. I need you to abduct him. Buki narrowed his eyes. You seem in a hurry. It's that someone has recently caught my attention. Uzumaki Naruto. What, the Kyuubi brat? Yeah, Sasuke-kun is an avatar of vengeance that cannot die until he kills his brother and fulfilled his ambition. When he fought me in the Forest of Death, he engaged me without fear of death, even when he knew he couldn't win. I thought he was a more careful type of person. Gazing into the sky, he added, according to the info you gave me, the Kyuubi brat has probably changed his heart and goal. Licking his lips, he concluded, those two must be separated if I am to dye Sasuke-kun my color. Buki narrowed his eyes, then turned away, intent on proving his worth. Buki-kun, if you intend to stop me, then kill Sasuke now. Buki was startled by this. Granted, Orochimaru didn't scare him, but those eyes were unnerving. You are strong, but only as strong as Kakashi-kun, therefore, not strong enough to end my life. Buki was now locked in a staring match with his master. He slightly relaxed when Orochimaru grinned and said, just kidding. You can go now, I trust you. When Buki used his shunshin to leave, Orochimaru was somewhat intrigued by his somewhat new subordinate. That look on his face. I know he's stronger than his brother, but I could never tell what either were thinking. Your matches will be shown in front of everyone, said Sandaime. We wish for all of you to show off your prowess as the representative of your country. Therefore, the main matches will take place in 1 month. When Naruto voiced the confusion everyone had on the time period, Sandaime continued. The month given is the time that should be used for the necessary preparations. In other words, we're going to announce to the daimyos and shinobi leaders that the preliminaries are over. In addition, the month will also give you time to make your own preparations. Hachi, sick of the metaphors Sandaime was giving out, asked, what do you mean? You will have time to analyze the information you gathered from the preliminaries. As I said before, the preliminaries were equal to actual combat situations, with each individual knowing nothing of their opponent. Many thoughts went through the heads of the genin, such as, I didn't expect him to use sand as a weapon, from Shikamaru, and that's the way it's gonna stay, for now, from Hachi. But the main matches won't be like that. There are some here who have used their full potential here, but the month given will help you improve. Buki had gotten into the hospital and slain the 3 Anbu in Sasuke's room. It is unfortunate that fate smiled down on both of us, said he to the unconscious Sasuke. He is young, but with a dark heart at his age. He would use the power given to him by Orochimaru-sama to do with what he will. Taking a scalpel, he put it up to Sasuke's neck, then flung it at Kakashi, who stood in the doorway and caught it. Excellent, Kakashi-kun. A word of advice. Have at least 10 Anbu stationed next time. Kakashi was visibly shaken by the dead Anbu he had stationed. Buki, you were sworn to the allegiance of the village, not to pursue your own aims. Stepping forward, he asked, why did you try to kill Sasuke? Depending on your answer, I might have to take you to Ibiki. Ibiki doesn't scare me, Kakashi, said Buki, turning to face the silver-haired Chunin. And as for my own aims, I just prefer to think of it as changing hands. Shinobi are tools, are we not? And what business of yours is if I choose to change hands? Kakashi was silent, analyzing the Chunin before him. Buki was the sensei of Kabuto, Yoroi, and Masumi, and it was a well-known fact at this point that the 3 were dead. But he had his suspicions with Kabuto, and since Buki was his Chunin sensei. Are you connected to Orochimaru? You might not be able to prove that if you capture me now, would you? Just answer the damn question. Long story short. Buki pulled out a curved kunai and held it to Sasuke's throat, while Kakashi pulled his own kunai out. One twitch from Buki was all Kakashi needed, and he rushed the other Chunin, knocking him to the ground, while watching one of the Anbu rise up and run for the door, only to discover Kage Bunshin? The Anbu found himself between 2 Kakashis. But then, another Anbu on the floor threw some kunai at the window and jumped. Kakashi didn't expect that, so when the Anbu between him and his clone fell to the ground, he ran to the window. The Anbu below him was free-falling, and he removed the mask to reveal Yakushi Buki, smirking, and raising his middle finger at the gaping copy Nen. Damn, growled Kakashi as Buki disappeared into the trees, and his Kage Bunshin poofed into smoke. He went to inspect the fake Buki, only to discover that the skin on Buki peeled a little. A Hitokugatsu, 3, said a surprised Kakashi. He knew without inspecting the newly fallen Anbu that he would find the same thing. He erased his odor, muted his heartbeat, impersonated one of the Anbu he killed, and kept an escape route open. Kakashi growled at his own weakness. A guy like that working for Orochimaru, I wouldn't be able to kill either, at the state I'm in. Sandaime had that odd gleam in his eye, and Naruto didn't like it at all. True to form, Sandaime confirmed it with, "Before I let you all go, there is something important we must do before the main matches. Take a piece of paper from Anko as she comes by you." "I'll walk, so take it in turns," said she. After she passed them out, Ibiki asked if everyone got one, then to say what number they picked up. Dosu got 8, Naruto got 1, Temari got 7, Gaara got 5, Hachi got 3, Shikamaru got 9, Neji got 2, and Shino got 4. Marking down Sasuke as 6, Sandaime told them the numbers meant a tournament-style matchup, which Ibiki then showed them. The first bracket was Uzumaki Naruto vs Hyuga Neji, the second bracket read, Ryunosuke Hachi vs Aburame Shino. The third bracket said Gaara vs Uchiha Sasuke, and the final bracket was the most confusing. It had Kinuta Dosu vs Nara Shikamaru, and the winner of that match vs Temari. The genin had their own thoughts at the matchups. "This will require research. Looks like my match come late in the game. What, it's just a tournament? Ah, damn, I've got an extra match and I don't want to have to avenge Choji. The Kakaichu user. Should be a challenge. Uchiha Sasuke, perfect. Hyuga Neji, right off the bat, eh? I wouldn't have it any other way." Sandaime then explained that even though the matches were in a tournament style, the possibility of Chunins would depend on the rating of the judges, who would be the case cage, the daimyos, Sandaime himself, and the head shinobi. He said that even if some were to lose in their first round, there would still be a chance of them becoming Chunin if their match was found satisfactory. But not everyone would become Chunin, because winning the matches would depend on the contestants showing off their skills. "That is all," concluded Sandaime. "We are adjourned until next month." "So," thought Hachi, as everyone filed out, "my second match could be against Uzumaki, I must inform the others." Naruto went to the hospital and asked where Hyuga Hinata's room was. But the receptionist said that visiting hours were over. "Bull," said Naruto, clearly annoyed at the antics of this woman. He knew her as one of the people here who hated him with a vengeance. "Visiting hours are over at 11 p.m., and it's 6 p.m. right now." "Visiting hours have changed," she said, whereupon Naruto sneezed rather loudly. "Sorry," he said, wiping his nose on his sleeve, "I'm allergic to bullshit." "Listen here, you little ba. Naruto," said Kakashi walking around the corner. "Stop antagonizing the receptionist. Well, tell her to let me see Hinata-chan. 'Cause you and I know damn well that if it were Kiba, she'd let him in a heartbeat," he argued, pointing a finger at the red receptionist. "Oh, how I do," thought Kakashi, as he thought to how disappointed his sensei would be with this village. His train of thought halted when he interrupted Naruto asking him for a favor. "Sorry, Naruto, I have something to do, and I don't have time to look after you." Naruto knew it had something to do with Sasuke, so he pointed an accusing finger at his sensei, and said, "You're training Sasuke, aren't you?" "Shit, he's smarter than he lets on," was Kakashi's thought, but his mouth said, "I found a better teacher for you. Better than me, even." When Naruto saw who his new sensei was supposed to be, he started to freak out. "Why's the closet pervert my sensei?" he yelled. Ebisu, the private tutor of Konohamaru, pushed his black sunglasses up the bridge of his nose while muttering, "How rude." Kakashi, confused, deadpanned. "Ebisu, a closet pervert?" When Naruto was about to tell Kakashi about his last run-in with Ebisu, where Ebisu fell for Naruto's Haremu no Jutsu, Ebisu panicked and clamped his hand over Naruto's mouth. No need for anyone else to find out about that shameful experience. "I'll teach you anything you want later, if you keep your mouth shut," hissed Ebisu to Naruto. "I'll hold you to that," hissed the blonde genin. He would jump at the chance to learn a new jutsu. Blackmail was so versatile. "So," said Bufu, his back to his subordinates. He, Hachi, and Kurisu were currently on the Hokage monument. "The village has fallen into peaceable times," said Kurisu. "But the plan will change all that," finished Hachi. They took the wounded from the preliminaries to the main hospital. That Oto-ku no Ichi would be useful to us. What about that Sabaku no Gara kid? Asked Bufu. He didn't want any potential monkey wrenches thrown into their machine of domination. He a Jinchuriki, that is true, said Kurisu. And judging from the rings around his eyes and the sand, he's got Ichibi no Tanuki, 4, in him. Bufu glared at the hospital through his telescopic eye. They say that a Jinchuriki of the Ichibi is among the strongest in existence. But I say otherwise. Yeah, said Hachi, cracking his neck. It looks like our info was right on the dot, about Uzumaki. About him being a Jinchuriki? Yeah, said Hachi, handing him a scroll. Hachi had snuck into the shinobi library, and copied down info on the Q no Biju. The only person worth of mention in the library was the Aburame kid, but it didn't matter to Hachi. I don't know about you, but he does resemble her outwardly. Yes, he does, said Bufu, regretfully. He didn't like talking about her because he had a sore spot for people stronger than he was. Whether or not it was the fact that the two of them were part of the Raikage's genin team before he became the Raikage, he still didn't like her. Getting back on track, he reviewed the scroll. The contents on it stated that even though the Kyuubi was the strongest, there was only one other previous time that it had had a human prison. Though info was sketchy on the exact person, it had been 721 years ago, and the vessel was refuted to have had 3 whisker marks on each side of her face. I did a little asking around, said Kurisu, casting his eyes toward the village below. Apparently, like the other Jinchuriki of the world, he is well hated. Therefore, he pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. He could be persuaded to join us. But most likely, said Hachi, it would have to be done during the upcoming battle. Bufu nodded. Next time, Otto should learn not to have scouts lurking around the village, said he, opening his Chunin vest. Stapled inside were at least 10 Otto Hite-Ates, slightly bloodied, from the Otto nin he killed. After he let one of them live in exchange for information, he let the nin go, then threw a kunai with an exploding tag tied to it at the retreating shinobi, who promptly exploded after it embedded itself in his back. Flashback. Bufu was jumping through the tree outside the village. It had taken some persuasion, but he had managed to convince the guards to let him leave for a temporary time to Takigakure, 5, and back, which in itself would have taken about 3 days walking. Too bad the guards didn't know he wasn't going to Taki. When he saw a gray blur a long ways away, he thought, hello, what's this? Pressing a button on his eye patch, the telescopic lens zoomed in, and he faintly saw the gray garbed attire of an Otto nin. He leapt from his spot, and like a true shinobi, stealthily made his way toward the opening in the trees where he saw the Otto nin disappear. Once there, he saw 11 Otto nin gathered together. Putting his left hand into the ram seal, he muttered, Maizegakure no Jutsu, 1A, and vanished. The Otto nin were in a discussion on how the invasion of Konoha was going to go down with Suna, when one of the nin let out a gurgle, and the others turned to see a crackling, bloody hand sticking out of the nin's chest. The nin fell to the ground, and the silhouette of a humanoid figure appeared, surrounded with crackling lightning, and a glowing yellow eye, looking like a demon emerging from the darkness. So, said the lead Otto nin, an intruder. On one accord, the remaining 10 Otto nin leapt at the semi-transparent figure. Bufu then did something that the nin never saw, nor would see again. Spinning in a familiar stance, he expelled chakra from his tenketsu in the form of lightning. Rai Arashi Kaiten, 2A. The resulting dome of electricity shot out random bolts of lightning, which inevitably electrocuted all but one of the Otto nin. That one that was left, was missing his left arm below the elbow, the result of a stray lightning bolt that hit him. It not only severed the lower arm completely off, it also cauterized the wound. Bufu turned visible again and stalked toward the lone Otto nin. Grabbing him by the scarf around his neck, he brought the nin up to his face and glared through his one normal eye. Why are you here? The Otto nin's response was to spit in Bufu's face, to which Bufu drew a kunai and jabbed it into the burned flesh of his left arm. The Otto nin screamed as Bufu twisted right, then left, then right again, then withdrew the kunai, causing blood to pour from the wound. Why are you here? He asked again, then added, and refused to answer again, and the next kunai I put in there is going to have an exploding tag on it. To emphasize his point, he drew said kunai. The Otto nin lost himself there. After soiling his pants, he told Bufu of the alliance between Otto and Suna, and of the use of Sabaku no Gara. the youngest son of Yondaime Cage. Bufu released the Auto Nin, who promptly took off. Waiting 7 seconds, he threw the kunai with the exploding tag at the retreating Nin, which embedded itself in his back, and promptly exploding, blowing the Auto Nin to bloody chunks. Bufu chuckled and moved onto the dead Auto Nin around him, stripping them of their headbands and putting them in his vest. 1 trophy, 2 trophy, 3 trophy, 4, he hummed. End flashback. That memory brought a smile to Bufu's face. He considered it a hobby of his to collect the headbands of the shinobi he killed in battle. However, he was brought out of his daydream by Kurisu's voice. Having the trophy fantasy again? Bufu snapped his head around, and distantly knew he was going to suffer for it later. Ignoring that, how long until Kureji gets out of the hospital? Knowing him, droned Kurisu, closing his eyes, he probably already escaped the hospital and is doing something stupid. Shino had been sitting in the library, studying several scrolls on the human body. It was questionable why he'd be looking at medical scrolls, with his Kakaichu that proved superior over the human body. The answer was that he was delving into what the Kumo Nin Kurisu said about his teammate. And since Shino was fighting Hachi, he thought it would be useful to delve into what the human body could do. Interesting, thought Shino, looking over the scroll. Ryunosuke Hachi was said to be able to harness his bioelectricity to an incredible extent, and yet, this scroll dictates that that should be near impossible. The most one should be able to do is convert their chakra into electricity, and that takes precision. Shino got an impromptu visitor in the form of one of his bugs. His loyal informant told him of the visitor to the shinobi library, Ryunosuke Hachi. Shino furrowed his brow. That was odd. Foreign shinobi were forbidden from the shinobi library. Hachi was clearly looking for something. Standing up, he followed his bug, and it led him to a book on a table near the back of the library. It was an old book, which said Myths and Legends of the World. The Kyu no Biju. A collection by Mikotan Byron. The Nine-Tailed Beasts? Said Shino, confused. Why would Hachi want to be reading this? Deciding against his better judgment, he took the book back to the table he was at, and began to read. Naruto was having the time of his life. No, seriously, he was pissed. Not only did Kakashi, his sensei, the man who was supposed to be teaching him how to be a better shinobi, shove him off to someone else, currently said teacher was trying to teach him how to water walk. In the hot springs, at which Naruto was doing badly. He kept falling in the water, which was scalding. Ebisu had said that if he didn't want to turn into a lobster, then he'd better get it right. And so went the policy of trial and error. Naruto had nearly gotten it at one point, if not for the person he spied peeping into the female part of the springs. He was able to get out a cry of, "Hee!" before he fell in the water again. Ebisu turned around to see a giggling white-haired man with a ponytail sitting in front of the fence. "I don't know who you are," said Ebisu, rushing the man. Quote ellipsis. "But I will not allow such shameful acts in my presence." The white-haired man turned around and put his right hand into the ram seal. There was a puff of smoke, and the man was suddenly sitting on an orange man-sized toad. Ebisu realized too late who this was, as the toad's tongue wrapped around his waist, then slammed him into the ground, knocking him out cold. "Don't make such a ruckus," said the man. "What's going to happen if I get caught?" Naruto, who saw the whole thing, asked in his mind. The closet pervert got his ass kicked. "Who is that open pervert?" "Hey," he shouted. "Who are you?" The old man, who looked like a kabuki dancer, had a horned hite-8 that had the kanji, oil, and thin red lines going down his eyes like tears. He then went into a weird dance. "Glad you asked. I am Mount Mayuboku's Gamma Sennin. Ora, Arrow Sennin. You knocked out my sensei. He was supposed to supervise my training." The Gamma Sennin, who shall now be referred to as Jiraiya, since it's his name, shrugged and said, "He interfered with my data gathering." At Naruto's questioning look, he continued, "I'm a writer. I write novels like this," said he, pulling a familiar orange book out of his shirt. Naruto recognized that book right away. Kakashi was always reading that book, and Naruto had a volume stashed under his mattress. The old, porn under the mattress, gag never got old. He had first gotten it after seeing an angry wife throw it in the garbage, with her pleading husband clutching her leg like a little kid. Going over to the garbage, he took it home and started to read. It took the better half of the night to stop his nose from bleeding. course, he wasn't planning on letting Jiraiya know that, so he decided to punish the writer. And he did, by yelling, "That's a perverted book. And your data gathering. You were just peeking into the female baths." Whereupon the two males heard the womanly screams inside the springs. Jiraiya angrily rounded on the young teen, and cried, "Bakayaro, 6. They found out I was peeking. Perv. Idiot. I ain't a pervert. I get inspiration from peeking to write better novels." Naruto was tired of playing around with the old pervert. If he had done it and gotten caught, then it would have been written off as a prank. If Jiraiya had gotten caught, he would have probably been beaten to within an inch of his life. Enough excuses. What are you gonna do about my training? Training? You mean the water walking? You know of it? Then you supervise me, declared Naruto, pointing a finger at Jiraiya. Jiraiya walked past and said, "I could care less about your training." After Naruto tried once more, Jiraiya told him that he didn't like people that didn't know how to ask for a favor, and that he liked girls. When Naruto tried to get him with flattery of Icha paradise, Jiraiya told him to quit lying, because people under 18 weren't allowed to buy or view the book. With that, Jiraiya took off. Shino gaped at the information he'd just absorbed. This Mikotan Byron person had detailed information on all 9 Biju. Here was an excerpt of what he read. Of the Q no Biju, the strongest is the Kyuubi no Kitsune, who is also called the Kyuubi no Yoko. This mighty beast could raise tsunamis with one swipe of one of its tails and level mountains with another. I have seen 2 Kyuubi in my lifetime. The first was when I was but a child, and the second when I had to witness the sealing into my adoptive sister. Luckily, the Kyuubi was able to save my sister, but she was forever marked by the Kyuubi by the whisker marks on her face. See Jinchuriki, page 101. Next to the excerpt was a picture of a blue-haired girl with pale skin and red eyes. She was a pretty girl, with an exotic aura, and 3 whisker marks on each side. Shino stiffened. There was one person in the village that matched up with what the author said. So, the adults lied to us, he thought. And yet, they told us to despise Uzumaki, because he is a Jinchuriki. Turning to the page suggested, he read what the author said on the Jinchuriki. The literal translation of the word, Jinchuriki, is, power of human sacrifice. The Jinchuriki are humans that used as vessels for beings such as demons. It is possible to seal a Biju into a human, but if it is to be done, it must be done at birth. The reason for doing so is because as a newborn, a human does not have their chakra coils completely formed, and they will be able to harbor the creature without major harm for the rest of their life. Shino stopped reading. In a way, it made sense. Naruto had 2 chakra coils in him, and as a result, it played havoc with his chakra control. It also explained his stamina. He kept reading. Jinchuriki were first used as weapons of war. A nation would capture a Biju, then seal it into a newborn. That newborn would grow up into a weapon that the nation could use against its neighbors and enemies. It disgusts me how the village that I originated in tried to use my sister as a weapon. Jinchuriki, while sharing characteristics with the Biju within them, are not the Biju themselves. Because of this attitude taken by most of the world, Jinchuriki are ostracized by society and mistreated. Shino muttered, how right he is. He felt disgusted with the village right now. The way they abused Naruto whenever he tried to get the village to recognize him as a human, not a weapon, was something unbecoming of the most peaceful village of the shinobi nations. After reading the next excerpt, he wouldn't have been surprised to see the end result. Typically, Jinchuriki treated like this grow up to be lonely people who despise humanity. I was lucky, because even though my sister hated everyone else in the village, I still loved her, and she me. She became a Jinchuriki to save the village, and yet those ungrateful bastards looked down upon her, and some even went so far as to rape her. I was able to stop them from doing the deed, but from that point on, she despised the village with a vengeance. I wasn't surprised when the next time it happened, she tried to kill the entire village. That got Shino to think. The Kyuubi attacked Konoha 13 years ago, and was said to have been defeated by Yondaime Hokage, at the cost of his life. But according to the book, the Kyuubi was too powerful to be killed by a human, and it had to be sealed in a vessel. So what the teachers at the Shinobi Academy drilled into their heads about the Kyuubi attack was false. But why? He asked. Why lie? Naruto had finally tracked Jiraiya down to a small restaurant, where he heard Jiraiya get bitch slapped by a female civilian who screamed, hentai. Granted, Naruto could have laughed at Jiraiya for his misfortune, but he needed training. Failing once again to dissuade the Gamma Sennin, he resorted to the only thing he could think of. Oiroke no Jutsu. In a puff of smoke, Naruto was replaced with a curvaceous blonde who'd turn any gay man straight. "Do you like me now?" she asked demurely. "Hell yeah," shouted Jiraiya, a stream of blood trickling down his face, while holding two signs that said, Perfect 10. Sweat dropping, the blonde thought to herself, are all men perverts? Within her own thoughts, the old lecher was jumping all around, saying stuff like, "You're my kind of girl," and, "What do you call this technique?" Answering, Oiroke no Jutsu. Jiraiya responded by calling Naruto a genius. This led the girl to believe that Jiraiya would supervise her training. When he said he would, but on one condition, she tried to look as demure as possible. When Jiraiya that Naruto had to remain like that around him, the indignant blonde went back to normal and shouted, "I knew it. You are just a perverted old hermit." Jiraiya drew back and said, "I am not a pervert." At his new charge's blank look, he grinned and yelled, "I'm a mega perv." After this, Jiraiya took Naruto to a river. Here he made the blonde retry the water walking exercise. Naruto tried a couple of times, but failed. Disgruntled, he threw off his clothes and was about to try again, when Jiraiya told him to mold chakra again. Doing so, Jiraiya instantly recognized the seal on Naruto's stomach, then noticed the Gogyo Fuin, 3A, over it. No wonder he can't mold chakra well. The Gogyo Fuin is interfering with the other seals, and keeping the kid's chakra in conflict with the fox's. It was probably Orochimaru who put the seal on him. Putting chakra into his right hand, he told Naruto to hold his hands up. When the blonde did so, he thrust forward yelling, "Gogyo Kaian, 4A." He was surprised when Naruto dodged it, then pointed an offending finger at him. I knew it, you were trying to kill me. Hold still, Brad, I'm just going to hit some pressure points." Pressure points my ass. Last time someone got near me saying, "Gogyo," I got my chakra control screwed over, while my teammate got a love bite from a gay snake. Yep, Orochimaru, thought Jiraiya, while he said, "A gay snake? That's a new one." He sighed. "I'm just going to remove the seal that Orochimaru put on you." "How did you know it was Orochimaru?" "I used to know him. He was many things, though I had a suspicion he was gay." "Now hold still." With that, he completed the Gogyo Kaian. The seal off him, Naruto tried the water walk again, and nailed it head on. While the blonde was jumping around in victory, Jiraiya thought it best to try to teach him how to control the Kyuubi's chakra. As the sun began to set, Jiraiya was told by Naruto about his interaction with the fox, and that he could already harness the Kyuubi's chakra to a fair extent. Jiraiya was speechless, then he nodded his head. "He's already grown so much. You'd be proud, Arashi." With that, he ended the training for the day. "Ora, Ero Sennin, if you see that teacher of mine, tell him he owes me a Doden Jutsu." The full moon was up in Konoha. Jiraiya overlooked the apartment his current student was sleeping in, and was approached by Ebisu. "Sorry about stealing your student," said Jiraiya. "Not at all," said Ebisu. "But Hokage-sama was looking for you. He could not determine where you were at, though. He'll be pleased once he finds out you're in the village." Jiraiya cast an eye at him and asked, "Did you tell Sandame I was here?" "No," said Ebisu. "But I told him about a goggled Kumo nin who was peeping on the females in the hot springs." Jiraiya chuckled. Now he could get away with that. "But as for me," turning his thoughts back on the third, he added, "since Sandame doesn't know I'm here, let's keep it under wraps." The shinobi stole his way into the hospital. He searched the rooms, but the object of his desire wasn't in any thus far. Opening a door, he found it. Her long black hair, cute face, ripe body. It was her, all right. No time to lose, thought he. He lifted her slightly up, and lowered his face. Like a vampire, he extended his fangs, and bit her. She moaned slightly, in pain or pleasure, he wasn't sure. Through his fangs he sent the essence that would change her life forever. Not even her master would be able to slay her quickly. His task done, he leapt out the window, jumping on rooftops like a true ninja in the night. Seconds later, the watcher who had seen the entire thing followed him. Sabaku no Gara sat atop one of the stone fish on the pagoda that was the Hokage's box for the Chunin exam finals. He stared at the moon, feeling it growing stronger, feeling it yearn for the day it would rain blood upon the earth, the blood of its enemies. Your time shall soon come. Mother, Suna no Shukaku. 7. Gaara was cast out of his thoughts by a familiar voice that said, "This was unexpected. Do you not sleep?" Glancing down, he saw the form of Kinuta Dosu. "I was planning on killing you here and now, to get a higher probability of defeating Sasuke-kun." Revealing the melody device on his arm, he asked, "I wonder which is faster, my sound or your sand?" Dosu was outgunned from the start. From the moonlight, he saw a shape rise from the stone that Gaara sat upon. He heard Gaara say something about its blood getting excited during a full moon, but all he could focus on was the horrifying shape in front of him. What are you?" And there, Dosu's life ended, in a cloud of dust. When the dust cleared, from where Gaara kneeled panting, a jagged line had torn itself through the shingles on the roof. The line led through the mutilated corpse of Kinuta Dosu. "That was incredible," said Buki, watching from afar with Baki. Was that his true form? Baki was about to ask him about Dosu, but Buki cut him off in the middle, saying that Dosu's usefulness had ended some time ago. "I thought he was a guinea pig to test how strong that Uchiha kid was," asked Baki. Unknown to the two, at least for the moment, Gekko Hayate was listening to the two conspirators. "Our allies from Suna? They plan to destroy us?" After Buki handed Baki the scroll that had an outline of Otto's plan, Gekko had heard enough. Preparing to take off, he stopped after hearing Buki say, "One more thing. I'll clean up the mess." "No," said Baki, "I will do it. As a shinobi of Kase no Kuni, of Sanagakure, I must lend my aid to an ally. Besides," he glared at the proctor through the solid wall, "there's only one mouse." Gekko and Baki met at the roof of a building. Gekko tried to fight Baki. He drew his katana, and pulled out his prime attack, Mikazuki no Mai. One Gekko became three, and the three danced around the astonished Baki in some bizarre dance. The real Gekko leapt into the air, and slashed downward at Baki's shoulder. He was able to cut Baki, but not deep enough. Worse yet, his blade was stuck in Baki's jacket shoulder, effectively cutting off any possible counterattack. That was Konoha-ryu, Mikazuki no Mai. To have mastered it at such a young age. "You are exceptionally talented," said Baki, an evil grin on his face. Gekko didn't like it, and he was proven right when Baki raised his arm and used the other to grasp the sword in his shoulder. "Your sword technique was excellent. But how can it compare to Blades of Wind?" "2 lives were lost this night," said Hachi, as he watched Baki leave the mutilated body of Gekko on the roof. Poor Kinuta Dosu, poor Hayate Gekko, so young, so full of life. He cast a glance at the shadows behind. "Nay, Zaku-kun?" Abumi Zaku stepped out of the shadows. He had followed Hachi from the hospital, and was intent on discovering the plans of this Kumo Nen. Perhaps that would redeem him in the eyes of Orochimaru-sama. "What did you do to Kin?" "I gave her a gift," answered Hachi, turning to face the Otto Nen with both arms in slings. "She will truly appreciate it, and Kumo will appreciate her." Zaku drew his good arm out of the sling, wielding a kunai. "I don't care for Kin, but I will present your cold, dead corpse to Orochimaru-sama." Hachi began to chuckle, then he laughed, and spread his arms to Zaku. He laughed, while at the same time, began to glow. The glow illuminated Zaku's face, which was terrified by the malevolence that came from this Kumo Nen. What the hell are you?" The last thing Zaku heard was Hachi laughter, as his scream filled the night sky, followed immediately by a flash of light and a resounding low thunderclap. "And this," said Hachi to the fried corpse that once was Abumi Zaku, "makes the third. Now," said he, turning to the pagoda roof that Gaara was on, "let's have a little chat." Gaara-chan. When Naruto woke up, he felt the need to go to the hospital, to see how Hinata was doing. Whether it was that erotic dream he had about her or his own feelings, he didn't know. He just wanted to see that she was all right. Getting dressed in his orange jumpsuit that he was promising to burn later, he set out. The sun had risen into the sky, which suggested that it was at least 7 or 8 in the morning. Ignoring how slightly chilled he was, he walked to the hospital. "Hey, Fox? Yeah? I need you to tell me who my parents were." That caught the Kyuubi by surprise. "What makes you think I know your parents?" "You're the Kyuubi. You've seen all and know all." "That doesn't mean a damn thing." "Hell, I haven't seen plenty of stuff yet." "Like what?" Like whether or not you have grandkids with the Hyuga girl you dreamt about. That made Naruto face fault. You bastard. What are you doing, looking at my dreams? All he got in response was the Kyuubi's raucous laughter. Damn bastard, he muttered, going red. Dreamscape. Last night, he felt encompassed by her warmth. Surrounding him, her very touch was driving him insane. She was on her back against a tree, and he stood in front of her. Her moans, her sighs, they drove him wild. She had the scent of lavenders, and he knew that before the night was over, she would have his scent on her. He stiffened, groaning out her name. Hinata-chan. Her legs wrapped around his waist, she sighed out his name. Naruto-kun, and then all went white. End dreamscape. Naruto shook his head, arriving at the hospital, but opted to climb the wall to avoid that bitch of a secretary he knew was there. I probably can't even look her in the face, he muttered, as he climbed up the wall. After searching through the windows for about 15 minutes, he found her room. Silently pulling the window open, he slipped in. He gazed down at this angel of beauty. She was more than he deserved. And he knew it. His heart wrenched when he heard her cough. Fox, you think you can help her? Probably, said the Kyuubi in his head. Put your hand over her chest. Kyuubi guffawed at Naruto's heart attack. You know what I meant. I was starting to think otherwise, muttered Naruto, as he hovered his hands over Hinata's chest. He couldn't help but notice that she had a nice rack for a girl her age. He shook his head. Last thing I want is Hinata-chan accusing me of trying to molest her, he muttered, as he concentrated on his task. The blood-red chakra left his hands and dove into her small body. After several seconds, Naruto let out a sigh of relief as he heard Hinata's breathing ease. Withdrawing the chakra, he muttered a small prayer to God for Hinata, then walked towards the window. Naruto-kun? Naruto turned around slowly, to see Hinata sitting up in the hospital bed. He moved before he thought. A second later, she was enveloped in his arms, and he was whispering that he was glad that she was okay. Hinata had gone redder than blood by the contact with her love, but she willed herself to not faint. Naruto-kun, I feel. Yeah, said Naruto, scratching the back of his head. The two were silent for a while, until Naruto spoke. I should go, 'cause no one knows I'm in here. Why, you mean that you snuck in? Hi, said he, dropping his head a little. They wouldn't let me in. I guess it's because, he trailed off, not wanting to mention the Kyuubi. But she knew. She had seen it in the eyes of nearly every adult. Naruto-kun. Naruto stood. He was getting ready to cry, which was a big deal for him. Hinata-chan, I like you, a lot, he began, whereupon she gazed wide-eyed at him, but I don't think you'd be happy with me. She asked, why? Naruto inhaled, then exhaled, and told her the words he was sure would send her run screaming. How can you, a proverbial goddess, like a guy like me, a demon vessel? He closing his eyes, partially to avoid the horror he knew was on Hinata's face, partially to stop the tears from falling. What happened next surprised him. He opened his eyes at the feel of a warm hand on his cheek. He saw Hinata, gazing at him with those lavender eyes he had fallen in love with. She had tears streaming down her cheek, but she was smiling. Then she moved in, and the two shared their first ever real kiss. Eyes closed, lip lock, the works. When they separated, Hinata spoke first. I don't care about the Kyuubi. His mind went blank. When he came back to Earth, he asked, how? Hinata blushed and looked down. Around the end of the academy, I saw you training. You threw a kunai that rebounded and hit you in the arm. I watched it heal, and I made the connection later at the graduation. So you don't care about the fox? She shook her head. No. Every day the Kyuubi stays within you. You save the village for another day. And she was cut off by Naruto pressing his lips to hers once more. She let out a little squeak, then fell into it. Naruto was quickly becoming addicted to her. The shape of her against him. Against her lips, he murmured, Aishiteru, 8, Hinata-chan, and she replied in response, Aishiteru, Naruto-kun. The two went on for about 30 seconds before the door burst open. Kiba barged in, saying, Konnichiwa, Hinata-chan, followed by a nurse, Sakura, and Ino, who was carrying a bouquet. Kiba gaped at the scene before him. Hinata was kissing Naruto. Naruto was kissing Hinata. Ino and Sakura were staring. The nurse was staring. Naruto was staring back. With a roar, Kiba lunged at Naruto, who jumped apart from Hinata, and out the window, uttering a quick, sayonara, Hinata-chan. The blushing Hinata was grabbed by Kiba, who said, "Are you all right, Hinata-chan? He didn't hurt you, did he?" "No, Kiba-kun. Ora, baka inu." 9, came Naruto's voice. "Leave Hinata-chan alone." Kiba growled and ran to the window, snarling, "I'm gonna turn you into a fox-skin pelt." Looking down, he saw a kunai flying at him. He caught the kunai and noticed that it had a white piece of paper tied to it. Unwrapping the paper, he turned purple with rage at what he saw. Hinata, Ino, and Sakura leaned in to see, the nurse having been gone at this point. Hinata immediately blushed, Sakura muttered, "Bakayaro," and Ino laughed a little. The paper had a picture of a human fist with the middle finger up. Kiba leaned out the window and yelled out, "Real cute, Narutard. Is that your IQ?" Naruto's voice answered, "Nah, that's your sperm count, Kibage." Ino couldn't take it. She started to laugh, and Hinata giggled a little. Kiba gaped at the comeback Naruto sent him, and Sakura said, "You owe me 50 Ryu, Ino."
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.